Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 1. Prologue. I've never met anyone with patriotism as fervent as yours. That was a comment Logan often heard from his comrades while he roamed the world for the independence movement. But each time his answer was the same. Patriotism, my ass. To those bewildered by his response, he had only one thing to say. It's just revenge. At those words, most nodded in understanding. Others interpreted it as a form of patriotism, a revenge for the loss of one's nation. The truth, however, was entirely different, but he never bothered to explain. It wasn't a story he was proud of, an unfilial son, expelled from his family for the sins of his foolish youth. It took him more than a decade of struggling in a cruel world to realize just how pathetic he had been. But by then, regret and remorse were all too late. Confronted with the sight of his family's home in flames as he approached to seek forgiveness, he wept tears of blood and vowed to avenge them. The revenge for his family. And the revenge that stole even the chance to seek their forgiveness, which came first he had forgotten over the years. All he did now was live with a single purpose, regretting the past day by day, a life that was nothing but suffering. When he felt the end of that burdensome life approaching, a miracle occurred. He had a long dream, memories of happy childhood days, times mired in jealousy, committing wicked deeds, the regret he felt once he came to his senses after being cast out and wandering, the war that led to his family's downfall and the despair he felt witnessing it, decades spent striving for atonement and revenge, and until the last moment, the only thing that satisfied him was his own death. He had given the worst of the bastards their just desserts, after all. But the biggest regret that haunted him even in death was one he couldn't shake off. I should have apologized. Though the calamity that struck his family may have been beyond his paltry power to avert, the sins he committed himself, he should have sought forgiveness for. And so with his last wish, he hoped, having died, he hoped to meet his family in the afterlife. To meet them looking as he did in those days, so they might recognize him and offer him a chance to apologize. And at that moment, an intense headache spontaneously racked his skull. With a groan, he realized something felt off. Pain? Moaning? Am I alive? His eyes snapped open and his body bolts upright. Throb. Ah! As he clutched his head, reeling from inexplicable pain, he heard a commotion around him. Young Lord, the eldest young lord has woken up, informed the higher-ups. The bewildered voices spurred Logan to finally look around, and the faces that met his eyes felt both familiar and strangely foreign. As he stared at them in dumb silence, a familiar face approached him. Young Lord, are you all right? A brown-haired youth, mischievous in expression but impossible to forget, moved closer. As Logan stared blankly at the brown eyes matching the youth's hair, his response came automatically. Rick? Huh? Yes, young lord, I'm Rick. How do you feel? Your eyes. Can you see this? The chatter from the familiar voice was overwhelming. Rick, his dedicated attendant who had died some 30 years ago, now stood before him, concern etched on his ageless face. How is this? My God, someone call the doctor. They said he'd be fine. As he grappled with the incomprehensible situation, the commotion around him grew. What the hell is going on? As Logan's eyes absorbed the long-missed, unchanging scenery from the window, the training yard outside the window and the manor, the ancient walls in the distance and the glimpses of knights, every corner bore the same emblem engraved everywhere. Flames, the symbol of the MacLine family. A humble, noble family from the outlying nation of Grandia, it was an emblem he had once held in endless pride. The sight he had longed for spread before him, unchanged as if time had never passed. Is this a dream? Even as the surrounding noise left him dazed, he stared blankly at each corner of the view from the window, his mind unable to comprehend the reality of the situation. Then Rick's voice grew louder in concern. Young lord? You can see this, can't you? Oh lord, our young lord. Somebody fetch the doctor. From being his dedicated attendant since childhood, Rick had always been rather dramatic. And now, Rick, I must insist on complete rest for now. The maids began to join in on the fuss. It was all too much to take in as he stood in confusion. Creak! The door to the recovery room gently opened. Bye, big brother, are you okay? A voice he couldn't ignore made Logan turn his head swiftly. Just beyond the slightly ajar door, a round-cheeked boy peered in tentatively. The boy's red hair and eyes were strikingly similar to Logan's. Ranyan? His younger brother, with talent monstrous enough to defeat him, a 19-year-old who undertook knightly training for a decade within just 3 years of holding a wooden sword. The same brother he once envied and despised, and whose tragic end he deeply regretted, longing for forgiveness in his final years. This is Master, you need rest. Eldest young lord, please lay down. A sudden headache struck again, and Logan clutched his head as Rick barred the doorway. Rick looked panicked as he tried to usher Ranyan out, still keeping an eye on Logan. Watching this scene unfold, Logan was struck by déjà vu. The bandages wrapped around his head, the pain, and the youthful face of Ranyan. An all too familiar sensation of déjà vu finally dredged up long-buried memories. If this was indeed reality, it would mean the first time I officially dueled, the day when jealousy and inadequacy reached its peak amidst the gasps of knights and vassals. He had lashed out at his brother, who came to visit him in his sick room after the duel. "Get out! You bastard of a concubine, how dare you!" It was an extension of the abuse he had heaped on his brother for 3 long years. But those words also drove his brother away for good, a brother who had tolerated all manner of mistreatment up to then. And in his final days, Logan regretted that moment until his last breath. That added to his confusion. Is this another dream? Or do I dream even in death, besides this pain? Ugh. However, he couldn't stay idle any longer. Even if it is a dream, or especially if it's a dream, just like he had wished for decades. Even though it might be in vain, he wanted to alleviate any guilty conscience. It's all right. Ranyan, come in. Young lord? Forget it. Come here, Logan MacLine. At those words, the boy's expression brightened. Brother, I'm really sorry. I should have been more careful. Ranyan, moving swiftly as the wind, stood before Logan's bedside, constantly bowing his head in apology. Shorter than his peers, an innocent face and an even kinder heart. Despite it being a common incident during training, the boy was genuinely saddened. The foolishness of his past self, who had resented and envied such a person, was laughable to him now. It's fine, I'm okay, stop apologizing like that. The confused boy's face, the warmth of his touch on Logan's hand, it all felt too real. And that made him want to say the things he had failed to say in his previous life. You didn't do anything wrong. Not at all. But I. He wished to keep talking with a smile if possible, but memories of what followed that day made that impossible. His past self, viciously lashing out, getting worse and worse day by day, leading to the incident that day when he was stripped of his heir status and eventually expelled from the family. The ensuing memories were filled with nothing but regret. I'm sorry. And while dreaming or not, past memories no, future memories surged forth. This kid, he died like that. His brother led the family after their father's death early in the Imperial War, always fighting on the front lines by the kingdom's decree. Due to that, the already weakened family's power steadily drained away. As the MacLine forces held off the Imperial army, the royal family took the opportunity to flee to another country. In the end, Ranyan was captured by the Empire, tortured, and then executed publicly. He was brutally used and died a miserable death. That shouldn't happen. Absolutely not. Overwhelmed with emotion, Logan's hands that embraced his brother tightened naturally. I'm sorry, Ranyan. Your brother is sorry. Words of atonement unsaid in his previous life. Heartfelt regret spilled as tears. Big brother? Why are you crying? I'm so sorry. I really am sorry. Though he had much to say, only one phrase kept coming out. The big young man wept endlessly. And the kid, a little boy compared to him, patted his back with small hands, as time short yet long passed. Brother, I'll come back again. Ranyan left with a smile. And as everyone around watched in surprise, Logan prayed with a fervent wish. If this is not a dream, if I have truly returned to the past, I will change everything. And he closed his eyes again. When he reopened his eyes, Logan was still alive in the past, and he silently cheered. Beyond the window, warm sunlight bathed the room. The chirping of birds rode the refreshing breeze as it swept inside. Upon awakening and rising from his bed, Logan looked at his body with disbelief in his eyes. The numerous scars from 10 years as a mercenary and 20 years in the independence movement were gone, and even his knees, which ached every morning, were completely fine. So it wasn't a dream. Decades of memories, up to the very last moment. Where is the holy relic? How dare you steal the Empire's treasure? Let's die together? Kwang! A total disintegration, the pain vivid as ever. Yet he was very much alive. A visceral clenching tightened within him as excitement shot through his limbs. The past he longed to rewind. The chance to alter all that had come. Of course, the questions remained. How did this happen? Logically speaking, it was impossible. The realms of time and space were considered, even in theology, to be territories untouched by creating gods, not meddling in the world any longer. If he went about claiming he had returned from the future, at best labeled a madman, at worst arrested for blasphemy by the church. Yet what explained his present situation? Really now, only one guess came to mind. That explosion. Much stronger than expected, but still. Returning to the past after being blown to bits, it was ridiculous. He had seen hundreds face similar violent ends on the battlefield. Could they have all returned to the past? It was absurd to even consider. Ugh. Racking his brain for a while, no answer came. Eventually, let's drop it. He spoke out loud, casting aside pointless thoughts. If too much pondering failed to yield an answer, he knew better not to dwell on the issue any longer. After decades of life's harsh lessons, it was time to focus on what needed to be done. First and foremost, creak. Gasp! Your Grace! At that moment, a maid cautiously opened the door and her eyes met his. As if frozen, the maid trembled violently and bowed deeply. I beg your pardon, my lord. Huh? What for? The maid's extraordinary reaction puzzled him, turning her face paler at his inquiry. I apologize. I shall take more care next time. What was she sorry about? He was baffled, but before he could articulate a thought, Rick appeared, almost running into the room. Dear me, our Mary woke you from your sleep. I should have reminded her. My apologies, my lord. Rick's stance, protective in front of the maid, waving her away, brought to Logan a sense of familiar guilt. I said to keep it down in my room. Even the maids don't respect me? You wretches. Crash. My lord, please. Ugh. A throbbing headache brought forth visions hazy as mirages. Tiny acts of cruelty, overshadowed by great sins, paraded before him in succession. Thump. The headache felt as if it had seeped right into his chest. Shame burned on his face. Sigh. Let's calm down, our lord. This child I will deal with. Don't get agitated. It's not that. Mary, was it? Oh, heavens. You there, come and apologize quickly. As he watched Rick making a fuss, the heat in his face intensified. Enough! No, my lord, I can handle it. Stop! The maid did nothing wrong, let her be. Ah, what, you asked for? A sigh erupted naturally. Never mind, Rick, bring me paper and pen, a lot of paper. Huh? Didn't you hear me? No, it's not that. What are you going to do with paper and pen to Mary? Nothing, just let her go, just bring it to me. By now, his face felt ready to combust. And so, a new life began, not without its challenges. Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 1. Prologue. I've never met anyone with patriotism as fervent as yours. That was a comment Logan often heard from his comrades while he roamed the world for the independence movement. But each time his answer was the same. Patriotism, my ass. To those bewildered by his response, he had only one thing to say. It's just revenge. At those words, most nodded in understanding. Others interpreted it as a form of patriotism, a revenge for the loss of one's nation. The truth, however, was entirely different. But he never bothered to explain. It wasn't a story he was proud of. An unfilial son, expelled from his family for the sins of his foolish youth. It took him more than a decade of struggling in a cruel world to realize just how pathetic he had been. But by then, regret and remorse were all too late. Confronted with the sight of his family's home in flames as he approached to seek forgiveness, he wept tears of blood and vowed to avenge them. The revenge for his family. And the revenge that stole even the chance to seek their forgiveness, which came first he had forgotten over the years. All he did now was live with a single purpose, regretting the past day by day, a life that was nothing but suffering. When he felt the end of that burdensome life approaching, a miracle occurred. He had a long dream, memories of happy childhood days, times mired in jealousy, committing wicked deeds, the regret he felt once he came to his senses after being cast out and wandering, the war that led to his family's downfall and the despair he felt witnessing it, decades spent striving for atonement and revenge, and until the last moment, the only thing that satisfied him was his own death. He had given the worst of the bastards their just desserts, after all. But the biggest regret that haunted him even in death was one he couldn't shake off. I should have apologized. Though the calamity that struck his family may have been beyond his paltry power to avert, the sins he committed himself, he should have sought forgiveness for. And so with his last wish, he hoped, Having died, he hoped to meet his family in the afterlife. To meet them looking as he did in those days, so they might recognize him and offer him a chance to apologize. And at that moment, an intense headache spontaneously racked his skull. With a groan, he realized something felt off. Pain? Moaning? Am I alive? His eyes snapped open and his body bolts upright. Throb. Ah! As he clutched his head, reeling from inexplicable pain, he heard a commotion around him. "Young lord, the eldest young lord has woken up," informed the higher-ups. The bewildered voices spurred Logan to finally look around, and the faces that met his eyes felt both familiar and strangely foreign. As he stared at them in dumb silence, a familiar face approached him. "Young lord, are you all right?" A brown-haired youth, mischievous in expression but impossible to forget, moved closer. As Logan stared blankly at the brown eyes matching the youth's hair, his response came automatically. "Rick?" "Huh?" "Yes, young lord, I'm Rick. How do you feel? Your eyes. Can you see this?" The chatter from the familiar voice was overwhelming. Rick, his dedicated attendant who had died some 30 years ago, now stood before him, concern etched on his ageless face. "How is this? My God, someone call the doctor. They said he'd be fine." As he grappled with the incomprehensible situation, the commotion around him grew. What the hell is going on? As Logan's eyes absorbed the long-missed, unchanging scenery from the window, the training yard outside the window and the manor, the ancient walls in the distance and the glimpses of knights, every corner bore the same emblem engraved everywhere. Flames, the symbol of the MacLine family. A humble, noble family from the outlying nation of Grandia, it was an emblem he had once held in endless pride. The sight he had longed for spread before him, unchanged as if time had never passed. Is this a dream? Even as the surrounding noise left him dazed, he stared blankly at each corner of the view from the window, his mind unable to comprehend the reality of the situation. Then Rick's voice grew louder in concern. "Young lord? You can see this, can't you? Oh lord, our young lord. Somebody fetch the doctor." From being his dedicated attendant since childhood, Rick had always been rather dramatic. And now, "Rick, I must insist on complete rest for now." The maids began to join in on the fuss. It was all too much to take in as he stood in confusion. Creak! The door to the recovery room gently opened. "Bye, big brother, are you okay?" A voice he couldn't ignore made Logan turn his head swiftly. Just beyond the slightly ajar door, a round-cheeked boy peered in tentatively. The boy's red hair and eyes were strikingly similar to Logan's. Ranyan, his younger brother, with talent monstrous enough to defeat him, a 19-year-old who undertook knightly training for a decade within just 3 years of holding a wooden sword. The same brother he once envied and despised, and whose tragic end he deeply regretted, longing for forgiveness in his final years. This is Master, you need rest. Eldest young lord, please lay down. A sudden headache struck again, and Logan clutched his head as Rick barred the doorway. Rick looked panicked as he tried to usher Ranyan out, still keeping an eye on Logan. Watching this scene unfold, Logan was struck by déjà vu. The bandages wrapped around his head, the pain, and the youthful face of Ranyan. An all too familiar sensation of déjà vu finally dredged up long-buried memories. If this was indeed reality, it would mean the first time I officially dueled. The day when jealousy and inadequacy reached its peak amidst the gasps of knights and vassals. He had lashed out at his brother who came to visit him in his sick room after the duel. "Get out! You bastard of a concubine, how dare you!" It was an extension of the abuse he had heaped on his brother for 3 long years. But those words also drove his brother away for good, a brother who had tolerated all manner of mistreatment up to then. And in his final days, Logan regretted that moment until his last breath. That added to his confusion. Is this another dream? Or do I dream even in death? Besides this pain. Ugh. However, he couldn't stay idle any longer. Even if it is a dream, or especially if it's a dream, just like he had wished for decades, even though it might be in vain, he wanted to alleviate any guilty conscience. "It's all right. Ranyan, come in." "Young lord?" "Forget it. Come here, Ranyan MacLine." At those words, the boy's expression brightened. "Brother, I'm really sorry. I should have been more careful." Ranyan, moving swiftly as the wind, stood before Logan's bedside, constantly bowing his head in apology. Shorter than his peers, an innocent face and an even kinder heart. Despite it being a common incident during training, the boy was genuinely saddened. The foolishness of his past self, who had resented and envied such a person, was laughable to him now. "It's fine, I'm okay, stop apologizing like that." The confused boy's face, the warmth of his touch on Logan's hand, it all felt too real. And that made him want to say the things he had failed to say in his previous life. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not at all. But I. He wished to keep talking with a smile if possible, but memories of what followed that day made that impossible. His past self, viciously lashing out, getting worse and worse day by day, leading to the incident that day when he was stripped of his heir status and eventually expelled from the family. The ensuing memories were filled with nothing but regret. I'm sorry. And while dreaming or not, past memories no, future memories surged forth. This kid, he died like that. His brother led the family after their father's death early in the Imperial War, always fighting on the front lines by the kingdom's decree. Due to that, the already weakened family's power steadily drained away. As the MacLine forces held off the Imperial army, the royal family took the opportunity to flee to another country. In the end, Ronyan was captured by the Empire, tortured, and then executed publicly. He was brutally used and died a miserable death. That shouldn't happen. Absolutely not. Overwhelmed with emotion, Logan's hands that embraced his brother tightened naturally. "I'm sorry, Ronyan. Your brother is sorry." Words of atonement unsaid in his previous life. Heartfelt regret spilled as tears. "Big brother? Why are you crying?" "I'm so sorry. I really am sorry." Though he had much to say, only one phrase kept coming out. The big young man wept endlessly. And the kid, a little boy compared to him, patted his back with small hands, as time short yet long passed. "Brother, I'll come back again." Ronyan left with a smile, and as everyone around watched in surprise, Logan prayed with a fervent wish. "If this is not a dream, if I have truly returned to the past, I will change everything." And he closed his eyes again. When he reopened his eyes, Logan was still alive in the past, and he silently cheered. Beyond the window, warm sunlight bathed the room. The chirping of birds rode the refreshing breeze as it swept inside. Upon awakening and rising from his bed, Logan looked at his body with disbelief in his eyes. The numerous scars from 10 years as a mercenary and 20 years in the independence movement were gone, and even his knees, which ached every morning, were completely fine. So it wasn't a dream. Decades of memories, up to the very last moment. "Where is the holy relic? How dare you steal the Empire's treasure? Let's die together! Kwang!" A total disintegration, the pain vivid as ever. Yet he was very much alive. A visceral clenching tightened within him as excitement shot through his limbs. The past he longed to rewind. The chance to alter all that had come. Of course, the questions remained. How did this happen? Logically speaking, it was impossible. The realms of time and space were considered, even in theology, to be territories untouched by creating gods, not meddling in the world any longer. If he went about claiming he had returned from the future, at best labeled a madman, at worst arrested for blasphemy by the church. Yet what explained his present situation? Really now, only one guess came to mind. That explosion. Much stronger than expected, but still. Returning to the past after being blown to bits, it was ridiculous. He had seen hundreds face similar violent ends on the battlefield. Could they have all returned to the past? It was absurd to even consider. Racking his brain for a while, no answer came. Eventually, "Let's drop it." He spoke out loud, casting aside pointless thoughts. If too much pondering failed to yield an answer, he knew better not to dwell on the issue any longer. After decades of life's harsh lessons, it was time to focus on what needed to be done. First and foremost, creak. Gasp! Your Grace! At that moment, a maid cautiously opened the door and her eyes met his. As if frozen, the maid trembled violently and bowed deeply. "I beg your pardon, my lord." "Huh? What for?" The maid's extraordinary reaction puzzled him, turning her face paler at his inquiry. "I apologize. I shall take more care next time." What was she sorry about? He was baffled, but before he could articulate a thought, Rick appeared, almost running into the room. "Dear me, our Mary woke you from your sleep. I should have reminded her. My apologies, my lord." Rick's stance, protective in front of the maid, waving her away, brought to Logan a sense of familiar guilt. "I said to keep it down in my room. Even the maids don't respect me? You wretches!" Crash. My lord, please." Ugh. A throbbing headache brought forth visions hazy as mirages. Tiny acts of cruelty, overshadowed by great sins, paraded before him in succession. Thump. The headache felt as if it had seeped right into his chest. Shame burned on his face. Sigh. Let's calm down, our lord. This child I will deal with. Don't get agitated. It's not that. Mary, was it? Oh, heavens. You there, come and apologize quickly. As he watched Rick making a fuss, the heat in his face intensified. Enough! No, my lord, I can handle it. Stop! The maid did nothing wrong, let her be. Ah, what, you asked for? A sigh erupted naturally. Never mind, Rick, bring me paper and pen, a lot of paper. Huh? Didn't you hear me? No, it's not that. What are you going to do with paper and pen to Mary? Nothing, just let her go, just bring it to me. By now, his face felt ready to combust. And so, a new life began, not without its challenges. Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 3. Not long after I left my father's study, a face I did not particularly wish to encounter appeared from the opposite end of the hallway. It seemed the feeling was mutual. As soon as our eyes met, she grimaced and made no effort to conceal her displeasure. With a soft sigh, I bowed my head as respectfully as I could manage. It has been a while, Mother. At my words, the approaching lady's footsteps halted abruptly. Mother, you say? It sounds quite awkward coming from you, my lork. The cold gaze of the lady, with her long black hair accentuating her cynical demeanor, fixed upon me. This was Marianne Kairos, my stepmother, the biological mother of Ronian, and the current lady of the MacLine household. She was no mere step-parent. Thanks to her efforts, more than half of the MacLine family's finances were sustained by the Kairos family. Thus, she wielded enormous influence within the entire MacLine lineage. Moreover, she was the individual who, in my previous life, would play a major role in opposing me, advocating most fiercely for my exile in the event that would unfold shortly thereafter. However, it's merely a greeting, Mother. If I show a changed demeanor from now on, perhaps this relationship could gradually improve. With that hope, I bowed once more. Of course, it wouldn't be resolved overnight. What's this sudden change of heart? Are you preparing for yet another pitiful debacle? Her response remained frosty as ever, even as my lack of reaction to her sharp provocation caused her to snort dismissively and walk past. Steward Vector, her loyal subordinate, passed by without even acknowledging my presence, only offering the most perfunctory of bows due to the demands of courtesy towards the family's heir. It's all my own doing. All of this was the natural consequence of my own past incompetence. As I watched my stepmother's figure recede, I let out another small sigh and turned away. Word quickly spread within MacLine Castle that the young lord had lost a duel to the young lord. Such news would have been a matter of great discussion in any noble or martial house, but it was even more significant within the MacLine household. The MacLine family had nearly lost their lands and title due to the atrocities committed by an ancestor 4 generations ago and the incompetence of former lords. It was only thanks to the current head, Patrick MacLine, becoming a senior knight that the family barely managed to maintain its lineage. Thus, the martial prowess of the heirs attracted considerable attention. Moreover, the fact that the second son, who had bested the young lord, was only 14 years old, added fuel to the rumors. From Ronian's prodigious talent to accusations of Logan's incompetence. Logan's scandal spread quickly, disproportionately to his actual failures. However, the man himself was too busy packing up his quarters to care about the gossip. Instead, what concerned him more was the person who was fretting much more than Logan himself. Oh dear, my lord, whatever are we to do for you? Stop the fuss. It's true that Ronian is a genius. It's not the young lord who's the problem. It's that rumors are flying around painting you as the world's biggest fool. I didn't mean to say. My tongue slipped. I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Don't worry about it. If we pay attention to every little thing, we won't get anything done. Is secluded training really what we should do? Yes. It looks like you're running away. Rick spoke up until the very end. This was the kind of kid he was. Rick, my most faithful servant who'd been with me since childhood, was excessively talkative and meddling. Though most of what he said stemmed from concern for me. In my previous life, the broken Logan dismissed all those worries. But now, the meaning was different. Though I still had no intention of heeding Rick's words. I owe this kid a lot too. With a sigh, Logan stopped his packing and patted Rick's shoulder. I'm not running away, just trust me. From now on, it'll be a path of roses. In my previous life, during the next official duel, I had Rick lace Ronian's meal with hallucinogens and then with paralytic poison. As a result, I was stripped of my right to succession and received a punishment akin to house arrest for an extended period. Despite being the mastermind behind the incident, unlike Rick, who was executed for poisoning a direct family member, my punishment was relatively lenient. Even the completely shattered Logan of that time had many sleepless nights due to his conscience. It was fortunate that I had returned to a time before committing these worst of sins. Now I just have to avoid making such foolish mistakes again, however. Rick was someone who had always loyally helped me out no matter what. He was someone I definitely wanted to look after. Not just my brother or my father, but I owed debts to many others. Just then, did you eat something bad? Cough. Yes, Rick certainly had a talent for deserving a beating. I won't make you do anything unreasonable anymore, and I'll take better care of you. Not sure what you mean, but as long as it's something good for me. Yeah, he was someone I couldn't take seriously. It's a relief you seem to have changed. Despite his words, the smirking Rick in front of me was definitely one of the few people I could truly rely on. Just pack up the stuff! I've been doing it this whole time. Watching Rick grumble and move about, Logan chuckled, wiped his sweat, and looked outside. Despite the bright sunshine, the future of this land was still dark. No matter what rumors spread or who plotted in the shadows, they were all meaningless for the moment. Just show your skills again and the rumors will change, and in a year, focus everything on the regional judgment. Only by safely overcoming that disaster and moving forward could we afford to contemplate the real future. 3 months, I can do it. No, I must do it. Logan's red eyes blazed as he gazed towards the inner sanctuary of the mountains. Why exactly do you insist on training in the ancestral mountains? I need a place where no one will find me, a vast space. Ahead of leaving, Logan had answered Rick's question. The ancestral mountains met all the requirements he had described. If things go as planned, it's something I definitely can't show anyone yet. After paying respects to the ancestral tablets and unpacking his things, Logan, with a mix of anxiety and anticipation, climbed the mountain, gripping his heart that throbbed with excitement. I can do it, I have to. Logan reassured himself, recalling the contents of the secret manual he had reviewed just before starting his climb. The Divine Sword Manual. More than a swordsmanship manual, it began with the creation of a core of force in the heart with specific directional properties. This core of force would seep into the blood and flesh, transforming the body itself, a concept far beyond the grasp of ordinary talent. In his previous life, Logan would have despaired even at this initial stage, but now it's entirely possible, because the energy that surged within him was stickier, stronger, more concentrated than the force he remembered from his previous life. With this, it's possible. The higher quality force imbued Logan with confidence. True to his belief, the evolved force quickly assumed a certain pattern and gathered towards his heart, as described in the manual. The force coalesced into a core more easily and rapidly than imagined, as if it were predestined. The simultaneous formation of the core and the denser energy that emanated seemed to spur a transformation throughout his body. It was an ecstatic moment for Logan, saturated with transformational energy, and he was completely unaware that his body was shining a golden hue, radiating light in all directions. When Logan came to, it was evening. Though he had started his training in the morning sunlight, the sudden disconnect from the passing hours vanished his euphoria, and he felt a draining sensation that made him collapse unwittingly. However, that feeling was fleeting. A tremendous strength could be felt in his clenched fist, and a spry vitality coursed throughout his body, signaling a profound transformation. It's much more than I expected. Yet, it was a positive change, and there was no reason to dislike having become stronger, especially if the manual's contents were true. With a forceful swing of his sword, a smile spread across Logan's face. The sensation and power from a seemingly light stroke were entirely different than before. Yes, his fist clenched involuntarily. It was not merely a matter of strength. His physique and senses had fundamentally changed to better suit the art of swordsmanship. The training that changes a man, isolated training, it was all true. He was confident. The inferiority and self-loathing that had haunted the untalented fell away. Logan's laughter echoed with the disappearance of all the roots of his inferiority and self-condemnation from his past life. From that day on, Logan practiced his swordsmanship with fervor, nearly forgetting to eat or sleep. 3 months later, this time without fail. As prescribed by the manual, Logan squeezed the core in his heart, amplifying the energy. Creating a core and changing one's constitution was already remarkable, but those were only the basics of the Divine Sword Manual. The crux of the manual resided in the 10 forms of the sword that cuts through time and space, grandiosely dubbed the time-space slash. And now, Logan was attempting the sole technique, the one-star core form, that could be executed as part of the first form wave slash. And it will be successful. The feeling of building successes from months of failures seemed to be coalescing. Now, in a moment, amplified power surged through his body and a gold light burst from his crimson eyes. Ta! Light surged from Logan's sword like a wave, and as it struck, thick trees were shattered into fragments with a thunderous crash. Thump. Pale and exhausted, Logan sat down, unable to hide his astonishment at the success. The power was beyond imagination. Purely a strike extending only a meter from the blade, and consisting of mere 2 waves of force. It was a technique not meant for novice force users, but one that even the most senior knights, on the cusp of becoming aura users, could barely achieve. Even if it left him drained from a single use, it was an overkill as a trump card. Logan had exceeded his targets for the 3-month training. Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 4. It marked the end of the 3 months Logan had promised his father. As he descended the ancestral mountain and took the road back to the family estate, servants and vassals who came across Logan, or even those who saw him from a distance, avoided him well in advance. It wasn't solely because of Logan's notorious reputation. What, a beggar? Why is there a beggar in the estate? Shh, quiet, that's the young lord. That beggar person? Shh, shut your mouth, girl. No matter how softly they spoke, their words were clear to Logan, whose senses had been greatly sharpened. But he did not particularly care. Right now, all of Logan's focus was on one thing. The time is nearly upon us. Although his memory wasn't clear, leading him to come back a bit early, he knew that within a week, an incident would occur, an incident crucial for achieving his next goal. Money. The event that would enable him to get that money was not far away. I can do it. Wong, the robust force responsive to his will and his transformed body, filled him with confidence that he would easily accomplish his next goal, thanks to his visibly enhanced abilities. Ah, have you been rolling around in squalor for the past 3 months? What exactly did you do up in those mountains? I told you I was training. Ah, what kind of training do you get by rolling in the mud? Oh, my nose. Rick grumbled as he vigorously splashed water and worked the scrubbing brush. Despite showing open reluctance to approach the dirty Logan, the grayish-black water that rinsed out left him speechless. Ah, anything happen while I was gone? Logan asked awkwardly. Nothing much. Without you, sir, the estate has been so quiet. Ah ha ha ha. What I mean is, it was boring. Yes, that's right. Boring. The unexpected reply came after. The head young lord had fled a sparring match with the younger young lord. Disliking comparisons, he had given up everything and gone into seclusion. A coward was not fitting of the successor to a knight's family. During these 3 months of seclusion, weird rumors had spread within the family estate. That's ridiculous. Well, I have a good idea who's behind this. Don't you said that you don't care about rumors, right? You shouldn't get worked up. Yes, that's right. It's okay. Everything will be sorted out soon once I meet my father. Logan knew that his father, a high-grade knight, would definitely be aware of his awakening. Once his father realized this, such rumors would dissipate. However, Logan's complacent thoughts shattered in just one day. On his way to report the end of his seclusion training and meet his father, Logan encountered an unexpected situation in front of the residence. What did you say? According to the family rules, even direct blood relatives cannot meet the family head without prior notice. Looking behind him with an incredulous expression, Rick mumbled in a hesitant voice, "That rule is indeed from hundreds of years ago. What is this absurdity? I met him just like that 3 months ago." Then, the guard in charge at that time didn't do his job properly, sir. Logan looked intently at the knight in his 40s blocking his way. This never happened in my past life. Having made different choices from his previous life, it was natural that the future would change too. But he had never anticipated that his reception would deteriorate like this. Just then, Logan's heightened senses overheard the conversation of soldiers hidden within the residence. Is the knight insane? He's still the young lord. I don't know. He's always been reckless. He's retiring soon. You bet on that side, didn't you? Really think he'll turn back? Will he start a rampage? He's a coward who cowers even from a 14-year-old, so wouldn't he turn back? Well, whatever happens, it's going to be the knight's responsibility. We were on a break, so we didn't know. Now, at this moment, Logan could fully sense how low his reputation had fallen from this conversation. The soldiers are absent right now. No one can deliver the message inside. Please come back another time, sir. The knight's face, brazenly smiling on top of it all, twisted Logan's temper. Ha! Are you watching this guy? By nature, Logan was anything but meek. His years as a mercenary and rebel, after leaving his comfortable family life, had given enough patience even to a ruffian that would have otherwise been unrivaled. He didn't feel like indulging in such petty provocation, but something was bothering him. No one cares. Around the night inside the residence, many family members were either shamelessly watching or pretending to look away blatantly or subtly. Nearly all, if not all, were ignoring the knight's actions that crossed the line. Logan was aware he had acted in ways that invited disregard and that his reputation was at rock bottom. But feeling it this directly was different. Was it to this extent this is a bit troublesome? The plan he had thought of when coming to see his father, the plan to receive acknowledgement by showing his father the changed Logan and then gradually overturning his reputation at this moment, it was discarded. There's no need to delay. Though he had dismissed this mentally, the young heart within his still young body fanned the flames of calculated anger into his eyes. What's your name, knight? Dominant, sir. The knight replied with a broad, dismissive smile, now openly disrespectful. Right, Dominant. You humiliated me using an outdated family rule. Yes? I, Logan MacLine, demand a duel with Knight Dominant to redeem the unjust humiliation. The knight's face froze upon hearing Logan's indifferent follow-up words. Slap! A sparring glove that Logan removed from his coat struck against Dominant's chest plate and dropped to the ground. Everyone was speechless until the thrown wooden sword hit the floor, rolling away in silence. What use is a feint that can't even move a wrist? You call yourself a knight, and this is the best you can do? Logan's mocking voice broke the silence of the training ground, stirring astonishment among the crowd. That's impossible! The young lord did that? I didn't see it at all! While everyone, including the startled servants and retainers, sounded evidently shaken. Force user? The young lord? Huh. The most surprised were the knights watching. For the past few years, Logan MacLine was nothing but an undesirable piece of dirt to them. The direct descendant who, despite his lack of skill, only caused trouble and acted violent. That hooligan, whom they wanted to avoid, had revealed an unexpected side of himself. The knights, who usually maintained calm, looked at each other, even more agitated than the servants. Referee, I kind of want to give Dominant another chance. What do you say? Logan's voice drew everyone's attention amidst the murmuring crowd. Yes, proceed. Dominant, are you okay with that? The startled referee, suddenly put on the spot, looked at Dominant with eyes still full of shock, and Dominant, his face redder and even more wretched than before, nodded heavily. Eventually, the argument that started at the entrance of the estate led to the knights' training grounds. Sparring knights were abruptly turned into audience and witnesses, eagerly observing with great interest. Of course, no one expected Logan to win. Their interest was to see how well the young lord could stand against a knight, or how miserably he would be knocked out. No knight had missed seeing Logan's public embarrassment when he was defeated by Ronyan. But I wonder if I'm really poor or if Ronyan is a genius. If Logan were to win this spar against a knight, what kind of rumors would spread? Logan was already curious about what would follow before the duel even began. The Knight Dominant, proving to be a worthy sacrifice, spurred Logan's fighting spirit excellently. Take care of yourself, young lord. Still gritting his teeth in anger, Dominant's tone was polite. Despite starting the dispute, he lacked the nerve to curse at a direct family member in front of the many training knights. Let the official duel between Logan MacLine and Knight Dominant begin. For safety, the weapons will be limited to wooden swords. Do your best, both of you. A knight, who was suddenly put in charge of officiating during his training, looked unhappy. But there was nothing more he could do than take away the real swords and limit the weaponry. Even so, knights capable of wielding the force could kill with a wooden sword, so they were still anxious. But there was no going back now with Logan's firm resolve. Whatever happens, it's not my fault. Still, please take it easy, Sir Dominant. While he anxiously contorted his face against his wishes, Dominant charged at Logan first. Tut! Emanating from his body, Dominant sprinted forward, emitting faint red wisps. The force leaking out from his body was evidence of his immature control, but to the uninformed, it looked rather intimidating. I'll fix that. Pang! The wooden sword hurled at Logan split into 3 separate shadows, aiming at his upper, middle, and lower parts. End it with one blow. Dominant couldn't forget the humiliation he had just endured. Heather's critics and the ambitious juniors. He had already decided to retire when he resigned himself to the lowest rank, number 53, in the Knight's Order upon reaching 40. He was just enjoying his last life as a knight, handling moderate responsibilities. But the young lord's words ignited the knight's last bit of pride. I'm not washed up. Although lacking talent among knights, Dominan had his own unique move that came from his experience. Having decided on retirement already, he intended to swiftly overpower the young lord and teach the naive young lord his place with that move. Confident in his secret move, the triple kill, Sanjong Sha, Dominan launched his attack. Sure of his victory as the young lord before him seemed unable to move. However, thwack! Cook! The impact and the sharp pain in his wrist forced out a grotesque scream he could not contain. Thud! Crack! With a brief cry, the knight's wooden sword, flung from his hand, rolled across the ground. For a moment, the training ground fell silent again. What's the point of a feint that doesn't even move a wrist? Is this really the best of a so-called knight? Logan, still poised, broke the silence with his derisive voice, as everyone erupted into astonished exclamations. No way! That young lord? I didn't even see it? Despite the voices of the astonished servants and vassals. A force user? The young lord? Huh. What shocked the assembled knights the most was the unexpected demeanor of Logan. Over the past few years, Logan MacLine to them was equivalent to unwelcome filth. The direct lineage who just caused trouble and violence without any real ability. To see that ruffian unfolding in an unforeseen way was a revelation. Unlike the knights who maintained calm, they were now bustling with agitation, flabbergasted more than the servants. Referee, can we perhaps give Dominan another chance? What do you think? Logan's voice now drew the already mesmerized and chattering crowd's focus to one place. Yes, let's proceed. Dominan, do you agree? Startled out of his wits, the referee looked at Dominan with eyes that couldn't hide his astonishment. Dominan, his face now an even redder and twisted rage, nodded with heavy resolve. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 5. It's just luck, only luck. Dominan couldn't help but turn a blind eye to reality. If he admitted the truth of his situation now, all that would await him was ruin. Thus the noble young man before him had to be weaker than himself. No, it was right for him to be weaker. Dominan, having brainwashed himself, gripped his wooden sword with bloodshot eyes once more. Wah! With a mighty yell, his body flushed red as he rushed towards Logan. Overhit, he's overexerting himself. But the target simply chuckled. Overhit was a technique that put a serious strain on the body in order to draw out more power than one's natural abilities allowed instantly. While it could increase the force of a single blow, the gap between Logan and Dominan's skills couldn't be closed by such means. It's a mess of your own making. Logan's eyes shone coldly, and in an instant, his sword whipped through the air like the wind. Q again. Crash. Still. Thud! How can this be? As the sparring continued, Dominan's eyes grew unfocused, his gaze dimming and his injuries multiplied. Each wound wasn't fatal, but the power behind them was enough to incapacitate Dominan in a fraction of a second. The only reason he was still conscious was because Logan controlled his strength, and the one who probably felt this the most was his opponent. How can this be? No matter how much he deceived himself, fleeing from reality, he had to face it now. The noble young man he'd thought to be a mere fool was far stronger than he was. Not just in physical capabilities, but even the realm of swordsmanship surpassed his own. It wasn't that I was careless. In that moment, Dominan lost his fighting spirit. Had he been the kind to not bend in the face of stronger adversaries and keep his fighting spirit aflame, his skills wouldn't be stagnant even after 10 years. I admit defeat. Cough! Before Dominan could finish his words of surrender, the wooden sword struck his mouth. From that point on, Logan's wooden sword, unlike before, struck mercilessly, not sparing any vital points. Flurry of blows. It can't end easily. He had spent 10 years as a mercenary in his previous life. That experience taught him the importance of reinforcing the hierarchy within organizations, especially among rough men armed with weapons, and showing an example was the most effective method. The knighthood was, broadly speaking, a gathering of rough men with weapons. I've shown enough mercy by giving him multiple chances. The next step was punishment. Logan swung his wooden sword even faster, recalling the experiences of his past life. Ugh! So brutal. The observers expressed sympathy as they watched the duel unfold, but nobody actively tried to stop it. It was already known why Logan had challenged the knight. No one there wanted to cross the Grand Duke's heir just to help a knight who was about to retire. Everyone had recognized that the Grand Duke's son's skills had far surpassed those of an average knight. Ugh! Those skills are genuine. How could he improve this much in just 3 months? He could have awakened his force, but even then, could swordsmanship itself change so drastically? Logan heard all the whispers around him, and the moment he felt his performance had achieved its intended effect, he halted his relentless assault. Ugh! Thump! A gasp and a lump of flesh that was once a knight collapsed to the ground, unrecognizable even by his own family. But no one paid it any mind. Logan the young lord's son defeated the knight. The rumor spread like wildfire through the inner walls of the city. It was an unbelievable event, but with so many witnesses and it being such a hot topic, everyone was buzzing about it. Meanwhile, the protagonist of this chaos was finally having a private meeting that he had been attempting to arrange for some time. You've done well. It seems you've awakened. Did something happen during your training? He was watching as expected. It wasn't the question he'd anticipated, but Logan answered promptly. I just let go of my greed and decided to relinquish everything. With that mindset during practice, at one point, I felt the force filling me completely, almost like a lie. To the average person, this sounded nonsensical. But in reality, it was an insight Logan had acquired when he became a force user in his previous life. It was during the time he had sworn to give up everything for the sake of avenging his family, a truth he had only come to realize after suffering and enduring extreme training well into his 40s. Any typical knight who had to overcome his own limits to awaken the force after enduring such grueling practice might find it absurd. However, Sir Patrick MacLine, a senior knight, slowly nodded his head as if he understood. A realization of emptiness. It looks like you've indeed changed. Just as Logan felt that things were proceeding smoothly, his father said, and after such an epiphany, the first thing you do is assault a knight? He committed a crime worthy of such treatment. You heard the whole story from the soldiers, did you not? Yes, I heard it, but was it necessary to go that far on the spot? Yes, it was. Why? He attempted to deceive and mock the bloodline of his lord. If left to his own devices, he would have become poison, undermining the discipline of our house. Logan spoke without hesitation, and Patrick scrutinized his son's expressionless face. Feeling the intense scrutiny, Logan's mouth went dry with tension. Smirk. Dominan was greatly at fault indeed. He forgot his duties and tried to deceive you. That easy? Logan felt his tension dissipate momentarily. So I won't punish you specially. However, surely you won't let this pass so easily. Just as Logan tensed up again, focusing intently. You were too harsh with your hands. Restrain yourself for a while. Yes? Taken aback by the unexpected command, Logan could only respond blankly. What? Would you rather be punished? No, sir. The warning about restraint is not praise for your actions. Do not mistake it and never engage in such matters again without permission. You have not yet officially been given a position. I understand. And there is something else you should know. Yes? The Wolves family's Lady Rena will soon be visiting. Ah, the moment he had been waiting for had come. Yes. You and Rena will both be of age next year, so it's about time. She's coming here personally without using communication artifacts and brings with her a handwritten letter from Chiron Wolves. So it must be about that matter. The ease of his current situation seemed to be because of this reason, but it's probably going to be the opposite of what Father thinks. Annulment, an event that would once again thrust the family's honor into the dirt. In his past life, he remembered his father's fury over this matter, although he himself, still reeling from the injury to his pride, had been much more senselessly violent. And yet Logan remained silent, sealing his lips. 3 days after the incident with Dominan, the inner city buzzed with another rumor about the Grand Duke's heir. Lady Rena Wolves had come to visit the MacLine. Finally. Preparing himself for the awaited news, Rick, his face brimming with joy, came to him. Wow, how lucky you are. What are you talking about? I just heard from the other servants. They say she grew up to be unbelievably beautiful. So what about it? The daughter of the Wolves family. Your fiancée? When I last saw her as a child, she was just... Oh, she's already here in the Citadel. I better get ready. That's it? That's all? What more should it be? Wow, my fiancée, renowned for her beauty across the kingdom. Envy me, lads. Isn't that how it should be? What exactly do you think of me? Well, a brat, haha, no, just kidding. Sorry. Logan sighed quietly, recalling memories of the past. Rena's visit, that event, which would unexpectedly lead to the declaration of their annulment, had also been the trigger for his unspeakable deeds following the downfall of his sanity. Well, if I don't repeat that, it won't matter. The estate was bound to be in an uproar anyway. The servants didn't much care why the Wolves family's daughter was visiting. They simply hoped for a marriage or engagement to lead to celebration. Indeed, under the Lord's orders, the servants were already preparing for a banquet. However, once the annulment was declared, all those plans would be scrapped and chaos would ensue. The The one person who knew of the future held a bitter smile amidst the commotion. It's all pointless, I just need the money. He had to turn what was once the catalyst for his gravest sin into a new opportunity. If he left it as it was, the money would simply vanish, and he needed to seize it at all costs. Reviewing his plans and refreshing his memories from his previous life, he heard the voice indicating it was time. "My lord, your father asks for you." Understood. Unlike the jubilant Rick, Logan's footsteps as he left the room carried an unusually combative air. "Lady Rena Wolves has arrived!" Boom. With the servant's resounding voice, the grand hall's door opened, and a party entered. Wow. Unbelievable. The Lord is so fortunate. As Lady Rena and her entourage became visible, awe echoed throughout the hall. Aware of the attention poured onto him, Logan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Rena Wolves. Porcelain white skin and jet black eyes like obsidian. Her silver hair cascaded down near her waist, complementing her pure white dress as she gracefully moved forward. Accompanying her was a knight in armor adorned with a wolf emblem and 4 servants. The procession was unusually small for a house as rich as the Wolves' earldom, one of the kingdom's major powers, but no one felt it lacked grandeur. Such was the overpowering presence of Rena Wolves, who walked at the forefront. Gulp. As someone swallowed hard in the silence, Rena approached Patrick to offer greetings. "It has been some time, my Lord Baron. I trust you have been well." Without missing a beat, her melodic voice spread through the hall, causing another murmur of admiration. As always, impressive. Only one person, Logan, who had made a grave mistake swayed by her beauty and voice, slightly furrowed his brow. After formal yet amiable greetings were concluded, she, with the help of her servant, read aloud from the Baron's letter. "Because of unavoidable circumstances, we respectfully request to annul the engagement. Chiron Wolves, that is all." As she finished reading, the air in the hall plummeted into a chilly silence. To summarize the content of the lengthy and florid letter that took over 30 minutes to read. "We had believed you'd be an aura user by now, but after more than 20 years, you've shown no progress, and your son, our proposed match, is in the worst condition imaginable. There's no reason for us to demean ourselves by associating with your family any longer. So let's end this here." That was the message. The previously smiling Patrick's face now stiffened, and everyone held their breath, waiting for his lead. To announce an annulment without a particular reason, does the Wolves family intend to insult the MacLine? Patrick's voice, chilling with fury, enveloped the grand hall, as the atmosphere turned to a razor edge as if something might break at any moment. "Surely there's no such intention, Lord Baron. Concerned you might think so, I asked to become the envoy. I wanted to clarify any misunderstandings." Her voice was broken. "I spent close to a year here during my childhood, and those days are still vivid in my memory." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "The precious moments I had in this peaceful, beautiful place with young Lord Logan, I did not want to let go of those, despite being young." Tears streamed down her cheeks as Rena looked toward Logan. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 6. Oh dear. As the number of people nodding their heads increased while alternating glances between Logan and Rena, damn it, Logan struggled to suppress the curse that reached his throat and tried his best to manage his expression. The young Rena had indeed been a lively and cute child. The two had been close friends and spent a lot of time together during a certain period. But had time changed her? "Do you really think you suit me? Know your place and get lost. Why carry a sword when you even lose to children?" During his previous life around this time, her whisper that had pushed him to the edge and exploded with emotion. The memory of that day, still vivid in his mind, was just nonsense. Yet he had to restrain himself for now. It wasn't the time to stand out. As he nodded with a hardened expression, the atmosphere in the great hall shifted in an odd direction. But as a body bound to the family, not following that command was not an option. So I thought the best I could do was to meet Baron Patrick and young Lord Logan personally to apologize. The tears on the lovely lady's face were indeed a powerful weapon that could shake any man's heart, regardless of his age. Oh dear. The grace of the young lady. Such rumors might have become understated. Excluding the servants, only 2 in the grand hall remained unmoved by that face. "So, Miss Rena, what's the reason for the wolves' persistence? I'd like to hear the unavoidable reasons." At the words of one of the 2, Rena paused momentarily. Well done. He never thought he'd cheer for his stepmother. Logan forcibly controlled the spasms in his eyebrows as his stepmother Marianne intervened. "I apologize. It's a story I am not privy to. I have no words to give." You claim to have no idea despite it being your own marriage prospect? I am a woman, a body to be married off and become part of another family. My father does not discuss important family matters with me. Then are we to take it that you've come to inform us of the annulled engagement without any reason? As the verbal battle between the two ladies ensued, Patrick's face grew taut with sternness once again. Instead, we intend to clearly identify that the cause of this annulment lies with Rena Wolves and our family, and we will apologize and compensate for it. Rena's plaintive voice continued. However, compensate. Are you saying you'll end the harmed honor of the MacLine with just a word of apology? A chill-inducing, icy tone. Patrick's expression became unshakable as well. Rena bit her lip hard, hesitated for a while, and then struggled to speak again. The Wolves family is willing to pay 3 million gold in compensation for this annulment. Yes. Logan's eyes sparkled at the words he had been waiting to hear, and everyone in the great hall turned their gaze back to the upper seats. Objectively, Rena's hesitation was understandable, but in reality, it was no different than saying, take the money and leave us. Furthermore, the person hearing those words was none other than Patrick MacLine, the head of the MacLine family. The aftermath was predictably severe. How dare you! His voice boomed like an erupting volcano. Gah! Some of the lower-powered retainers staggered, and even those who were somewhat trained paled in the face of the murderous aura that filled the hall. Ah! Lady, get behind me! As Rena's complexion also turned pale in an instant, her guardian knight, Lockfern, leaped forward and shielded her. His simple movement cut through Patrick's momentum and relieved Rena of suffocation. Knight of the Wolves, Lockfern implores Baron MacLine, please calm down and let us continue our dialogue. A voice as resonant as Patrick's rang through the great hall, easing the dangerously tense atmosphere. Patrick then paused his fury and glared at the knight. A senior knight at that young age, quite impressive. He looked to be in his 30s. The knight named Lockfern, to everyone's surprise, matched Patrick in ability. Certainly a prodigy who would be expected to become a future aura user. But that doesn't mean he will really become one like me. Regardless of Patrick's bitter reflection, a senior knight was indeed someone capable of single-handedly protecting Rena, the younger daughter of the Wolves family. But this knowledge only fueled his killing intent. The life of a promising Wolves. That would be a fair exchange for the tarnished honor of the MacLine. As Patrick's killing intent focused on one point, Lockfern's complexion turned deathly pale in an instant. On the surface, they were of the same rank. But Patrick had been a senior knight for over 20 years. He had also never slacked in his training since, thus accumulating a different level of strength. Lockfern was acutely aware of this more than anyone. I trust you will not do so. Regretful, if you even guess a little of my mood now, you would know that your hope is vain. Our family had asserted with certainty that your lordship knows what honor is, and not to oppress a young lady or a junior. I trust in these words. As Lockfern referenced the Count of Wolves and spoke of honor, Patrick's gaze wavered. It is not our intention to buy honor with money. Instead, we want to show our sincerity to preserve the friendship between both families in light of the unavoidable circumstances. Rena's words added on, and Patrick gritted his teeth. Kairos Wolves. Pressuring the other party any further would only label him as one who knows not honor. Even though it was the other side that first insulted him and his family, the target was merely a knight over 30 and a girl not yet an adult. Is this what they aim for, sending only them? Patrick swallowed his anger quietly as he thought of his old friend and fellow student with silver hair. The suffocating tension that had dominated the hall began to dissipate as if it were all a lie. As such a daring child has grown into a confident young lady, accompanied by a sturdy shield. Observing Rena's complexion return to normal, Patrick declared with a stern face, although the reason for the visit is not beautiful, a guest is still a guest. The MacLine does not oppress visitors. Rena and Lockfern breathed a sigh of relief at that when. However, we will not accept the unilateral proposal of the Wolves. Patrick's resolute declaration once again hardened their expressions. The MacLine family has only one request as compensation for the broken engagement. Rena and Lockfern waited anxiously for Patrick's words with tense expressions. Envoy Rena Wolves, apologize politely to my son, the party concerned. We will decline any other compensation. The calm voice of a man who understands honor filled the hall, as expected of the family head. That's the true nobility. Indeed. As the majority of the retainers nodded, Logan, who had been quietly observing the situation, decided to intervene to overturn the atmosphere. I must obtain it. Money, That was his goal in this incident, what he was determined to secure, and what he needed for the future. Think of apologizing with words and let it go, madness. 3 million gold was nearly a year's worth of MacLine's budget, inclusive of support from the Kairos family. In his view, his father and the agreeing retainers all seemed out of their minds for refusing that compensation. Only a few administrators seemed to share his sane thinking, showing rotten expressions. How can a near-bankrupt family refuse money like that? Without support, we'll face bankruptcy any moment. Therefore, he had to secure that money to lay the foundation for overcoming future crises. What is it, Logan? Speak your mind. I'd like to accept the Wolves family's conditions of apology. What? Naturally, this rational approach ignited his father's anger. Are you saying that you will overturn my decision, Logan? Patrick directed his furious gaze straight at him, his face fixed with severity. Although his tone was calm, the sharp aura that covered Logan pressed him threatfully. Gah, indeed. A senior knight was a senior knight. Clearly, his current self couldn't handle the pressure. The problem was that even this father of his was nothing more than a minnow in the grand scheme, barely registering as a strong figure kingdom-wide. In front of top-tier knights or aura users classified as superhumans, he couldn't even present a name card. Not to mention, in the Empire there existed not just aura users, but legendary aura masters. If I can't withstand even this much, I won't be able to achieve anything in the future. Logan clenched his teeth and endured the pouring aura. Although it was a small achievement, the core lodged in his heart provided aid to Logan. As the party involved in the annulment, I believe I have the right to voice my opinion. Moreover, I think my suggestion would benefit the family more. Logan defiantly met his father's gaze. Help? You are mistaken. Logan, the MacLine is not so destitute that we would sell our honor for money. No, we are in need. Without Kairos' support, we'll go bankrupt immediately. Logan wanted to shout that out loud, but it was not something he could say in public. Therefore, he brought up another reason why they couldn't help but accept the knightly family's terms. It's precisely because of that honor. You're saying overturning my words would actually be for honor's sake? Albeit reluctantly, the Count of Wolves ranks higher than our family, and they also rule as lords over the eastern border. So what? While the Wolves family is a dominant power in the east, they are not the lord we serve. If you just accept an apology and conclude the matter, I fear rumors might spread that our family has been subjugated by the Wolves. Murmurs arose in the previously silent hall. Luckily, it seemed to have some effect. Specifically, the administrators, always troubled by budget issues, showed signs of cheer on their faces. Taking advantage of this, Rena, formerly withdrawn, stepped forward. Wolves is not a family ignorant of such propriety. We respect the honor of the MacLine to the utmost. But coming here to demand an annulment and then talking about propriety, isn't that a bit funny, miss? Before she could reach her main point, Logan interrupted her. The gaze he directed at his very pretty ex-fiancée was filled with cynicism. Her face, acting sorrowful, was aggravating. Just glancing at her recalled memories that were still unpleasant, even as flashbacks. In his past life, he was dragged out to face the public during his house arrest, and he received an apology in public according to his father's declaration. His pretty and lively childhood friend, now breathtakingly beautiful, had bowed her head crying before him. Her reason was the annulled engagement, causing heartache, and his own pitiable situation brought tears to his eyes as well. He thought his beautiful fiancée was genuinely mourning their unavoidable fate. Please make one last memory with me. Would you come to my room tonight? And looking into her beautiful eyes as she whispered to him, he decided to elope out of love. His life was already ruined as a MacLine's son. He was willing to risk everything for the woman he loved. And that night, when he secretly snuck into her room, he found her strangely cold, smiling as she ripped her own clothes with a dagger. Scram! The young lady's scream echoed through the manor, and she threw the dagger at him. As he instinctively drew his longsword and knocked away the dagger, Lockfern burst into the room and subdued him. All the servants of the house witnessed the sight. The sight of the eldest son wielding a long sword and being restrained by a knight in front of a beautiful young lady with torn clothes crying in her room at midnight. "Oh no, Rena, why are you doing this? You called upon me." Logan's desperate cry was nothing more than an excuse. Already condemned, not even his family believed him. "And do you really think you suit me? Know your place and get lost? Losing to a child, why do you even carry a sword? Thanks to you, this is easy. Thank you." The small whisper he heard as he was taken away. At that voice, Logan's reasoning broke, and his defiance was taken for truth. As a result, the MacLine family had to apologize to the Wolves and even pay a hefty compensation. The problematic delinquent of the family being banished was just an afterthought. The incident, which Logan experienced before he was of age, influenced his life significantly thereafter. In a very negative way. I became distrustful of women because of you, you damn wretch. He ground his teeth inwardly, while outwardly he maintained composure and spoke again. His past life grievances were just that, past. The pressing matter was different. If you're truly sorry, wouldn't it be normal to accept compensation? Right now, miss, it seems like you actually want us to refuse that compensation. With that, the mood in the Great Hall shifted once again. That's right. Certainly quite. It does look like persuading us not to accept it. Noticing the hall's buzzing, Rena bit her lip hard, a momentary flash of confusion on her face. Representing the Wolves family, I will offer a sincere apology once more as the party involved in the engagement. Regardless of which choice your lordship makes, I will ensure the promised amount is paid. The sorrowful expression of the beautiful woman once again targeted the high seats. Faced with her gaze, Baron MacLine's face turned frighteningly rigid. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 7. There's no need for that, Lady Rena. My stance is unwavering. Logan, the honor of the MacLine family cannot be traded for money. Yes? After all that had been said. Why? For what reason? Even as Logan looked at his father with eyes full of incredulity, his father's stern expression remained unchanged. Beside him stood his stepmother, her gaze mocking, and other members of the household nodding their heads in agreement. Feeling dizzy at the sight of all those piercing stares, Logan struggled to maintain his composure. Why on earth? Frustration bubbled up and his chest felt tight. It wasn't terribly frowned upon among the noble families to forsake profit for the sake of honor, but that should be decided considering the circumstances. How does it make any sense to refuse money given our family's situation? Logan gritted his teeth internally, yet his father's stance was unyielding. The problem wasn't just this. Why are they acting this way? It looks like he's just being stubborn because his pride was hurt by the rejection. Is that worth defying the Baron's words? The heir has always been a bit. The servant's whispers comprised mostly of criticism aimed at him. Rena's face, shamelessly feigning regret, seemed to smile with the victory of one who had anticipated this very situation. Only after being struck by all these realizations did Logan understand. He had been too complacent in assessing the situation. I thought wrong. To think I could change the family by gaining their recognition? By when? Show a changed demeanor slowly over time? Everybody would be dead by then. It felt as though an icy wind had blown straight through his heart. Only 9 months remained until the estate war. Let's give up what needs to be given up. The only thing that mattered was to save the family by any means necessary. For now he had to gain strength on his own, independent of the family. With clenched teeth he declared, Lady Rena, in that case, I, as a party to this broken engagement, make my demand. Regardless of the family's wishes, I will personally accept the compensation. Logan, the booming voice of Patrick shook the hall, and a tumultuous energy surged behind him like waves. Gah! The force core within his heart pumped strength throughout his body, straightening his knees that nearly buckled. Although still immature, the vision of the divine sword with infinite potential was his to bear, even if it couldn't compare to the strength of a senior knight. But at least he had the power to fend off such oppressive pressures, in absence of direct violence. I will not be satisfied with mere verbal apologies. What did you say? If the honor can be compensated with a few fleeting words, then I consider its value to be just as trivial. The shock or perhaps anger at seeing his son defy him, Patrick looked at Logan with a complex expression. As a party to the broken engagement, I believe I have the right to make such a claim. The Wolves will follow the wishes of Baron Patrick MacLine, the head of our family. What is your decision, Baron Patrick MacLine? Rena interjected as the situation seemed to take an odd turn. Though she appeared willing to accept Logan's point, her words ultimately upheld the authority of the head of the family, essentially telling me to save the head's face. Logan's fierce gaze turned toward her once more. Then, after a moment of furrowed contemplation, Patrick opened his mouth with a heavy look. As the head of the MacLine family, I am satisfied with a sincere apology. However, as for how the affected party, Logan, perceives the sincerity of that apology, I'll leave it to him. My lord! Patriarch! The murmurs swelled, an unexpected answer indeed. Rena's face, still displaying a hint of regret, contorted momentarily at his words. As the commotion among the household members subsided, Patrick continued, Think carefully, Logan. If you accept money for this insult to our honor, you are suggesting that your honor is always for sale in the future. Patrick believed that if Logan had truly changed, he would make the right choice at this juncture. That was why he gave his son this final chance, even at the cost of his authority as the head of the family. Yet Logan's resolve did not waver. I, as a party to the broken engagement, will accept the compensation from the Wolves family. At his declaration, Patrick's face contorted and a smirk emerged on his stepmother's. Astonishingly, Rena paid the immense sum of 3 million gold, not through a bank transfer but in gold coins, right then and there. The large chest almost reaching Logan's waist, filled with glittering gold, inevitably shook his composure. By this, I declare the dissolution of the engagement between the Count Wolves family and Baron MacLine's family effective. I accept. Rena turned to leave after setting down the chest of gold coins, her expression ever so slightly distorted. Logan watched her with a conviction that his choice was correct, yet his father seemed to think differently. I thought you had changed a bit, but instead you've gotten worse. All I did was for the family. My fault, then, for failing to properly instruct you on the value of honor. Despite the largest pile of gold he had ever seen before him, his father's sigh carried nothing but bitterness. As Patrick left the hall, the faces of the knights following him bore smirks of ridicule. Meanwhile, his stepmother followed, her face beaming as if she had gained something substantial, a stark reminder of how his decision was received by the family. Watching them with an expressionless gaze, Logan reaffirmed his resolve. I will not concern myself with my reputation within the family. First, I shall focus on winning the estate war. Yet even as he calculated how best to spend the funds for the upcoming estate battle, he couldn't help a feeling of heaviness in his heart. Bang! A loud noise reverberated from inside a luxurious carriage. Are you all right, miss? Lockfern inquired, but only silence followed within the carriage for a while until a reply came. Yes, I'm fine. Are you upset? What went wrong? I thought if I mentioned a ridiculous sum, the Baron would surely refuse out of sheer pride. My prediction was right, but I didn't expect the heir Logan to react like that. That greedy brute. Bang. There was another loud noise, but Lockfern refrained from prying into the interior of the carriage, instead initiating a new topic. The heir Logan seems quite different from the rumors. Has his greed outweighed the rumors, or is it that he doesn't understand honor? I can't say about emotional factors, however, it's certain that he is a Force user. He's capable of violence too? Rena reacted with surprise, but Lockfern was unequivocal. Yes, considering his age, it's quite an accomplishment. So he's not just a spoiled rascal as the rumors suggest. If he had kept up his roguish behavior and not put in the effort, even as a genius, he wouldn't have reached the level of a Force user, particularly at the young age of 19. Yes, seems the rumors might be baseless. Lockfern emphasized that Logan was not as simple an opponent as they thought, trying to console Rena. But she was not to be fooled. But still, it doesn't change the fact that I was bested. It couldn't be helped. We had to bow before them. We were in enemy territory. Enough. Don't try to comfort me, Lockfern. You won't have to worry anymore, will you? Now that the obstacle is gone, you'll surely make connections with another noble house and compare to. That's obvious. But I will certainly get my revenge for this frustration. As you wish, miss, it will come to pass. The luxurious carriage departed swiftly from MacLine territory. The day after Rena left, the MacLine household was abuzz with the shocking news of the broken engagement and rumors of the dissolute heir pulling off an immense sum from the fairy-like beauty by defying his lord's wishes. Although Logan was the party to the broken engagement, he wasn't met with sympathy but rather criticism for his harsh decision. However, Logan himself couldn't help but smile despite the finger-pointing and whispers, finally. No matter how others saw it, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief as a troubling time had passed safely. Since his return, the shackles weighing down on his soul had been released, giving him a sense of liberation. If his heart had its way, he could spend the entire day basking in triumph, but he couldn't afford to be overly elated. Pondering over the future swiftly dispersed his mirth. His plan to strengthen the family to overcome the crisis had shifted to a resolution of tackling the crisis head-on. This is the beginning. The immediate tasks before him were numerous. He decided not to worry about his reputation within the family, but he must avoid giving his father a legitimate reason to intervene directly. He could no longer afford to cause such blatant disruptions within the household. So I must go outside. Committing to his plans, Logan mulled over what needed to be done. First of all, the money has been deposited at Cooper Bank. Cooper Bank, with the most branches in both the Grandia Kingdom and the Western Imperial Territories, also had one in the debt-ridden MacLine territory. Of course, when he went to deposit the money, They asked if he intended to use it to pay off the family debts first. No chance. According to the original plan, that's what he would have done. However, his experiences from the previous day had significantly changed his perspective. I need to build my strength separately. Regardless of his inability to discuss future information, the differences in thinking between him, the household members, particularly his father, were too drastic. The moment he entertained thoughts of changing things from within the family, they vanished. I must build strength from the outside, so first. Knock, knock. As he carefully checked over his plans, there was a knock at the door. Come in. Expecting Rick or someone familiar, Logan was surprised by the unexpected visitor. Haha, did you call Heir? A bushy beard that covered the entire face, a figure bigger than any standard knight. The middle-aged man entered with an awkwardly friendly tone. Dwayne? Yes, my lord, it's Dwayne. Dwayne Filchner, by the look of him, had the physique of a knight, yet he was actually a functionary, specifically responsible for the family's finances. He was also one of his father, Patrick MacLaine's most trusted vassals, meaning typically they weren't close enough for Dwayne to bear such a smile. As Logan looked at Dwayne with suspicion, a commotion erupted outside. Ack! Don't push! Hey, I was here first. A clatter of footsteps followed, and several familiar faces poured in behind Dwayne. Greetings to the Heir. The beaming bald man was Rugal Hayes. The official in charge of food supplies would usually skirt around Logan at any opportunity. Good day to you, Heir. The pleasant smiling overweight man was Farron Doyle. The official in charge of soldiers' equipment who often vanished without even acknowledging Logan passed by. These people. I was here first. Haha, good morning, Heir. Did you sleep well? Wiping his sweat constantly, the plump figure was Rufan, in charge of wall management. As far as Logan recalled, this was the first time they'd greeted each other properly. These familiar faces from around the courthouse, known for avoiding Logan whenever possible, were now vying for his attention. Heir, to greet you. In what was quite an amusing situation for Logan, he could guess the circumstances behind it. What's this all about? He concealed the smile curling at the corner of his mouth with a feigned indifference as he asked. Gulp. It's crucial to say the right thing, Dwayne. For Dwayne, this moment felt like a career turning point. Being the financial administrator of the MacLine family was an excruciating role. Were it not for his loyalty and the indebtedness he owed to the family, he would have longed to abandon the role. Constantly struggling with insufficient budgets, his tasks included running the entire territory's affairs and begging at the in-laws for financial assistance when necessary. Sometimes he couldn't tell if he was an administrator or a beggar clan leader. Such was the life of the MacLine financial administrator. But now, if he played his cards right, he could secure several comfortable years for himself. After all, he was just dealing with a headstrong youth. With newfound confidence, he sailed into his pitch. I just came to pay my respects. Your conduct yesterday truly made an impression on me. Eh? You stood firm against the unfair external pressure and proudly presented your case. Truly a magnificent heir befitting the MacLine family. With an admiring look and a sly thumbs up, Dwayne thought he had begun the conversation well with his best attempt at flattery. What kind of nonsense is that? The response from the so-called youth was far from what he expected. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 8. This little brat, he throws a fit even when praised. Grinding his teeth internally, Dwayne managed to maintain a smile on his face. The crucial discussion was about to begin, and there was no way he could let one comment ruin it. The recent hardships of the family make the sum of 3 million gold akin to a much-needed rain after a drought. Thanks to your lordship's ingenuity, the family can finally take a deep breath. He practically wanted to say, well done, now hand over that money. But instead he spoke politely, wrapping his true intentions in a facade of adult composure. Why do you say the family can breathe easy? It's my money, isn't it? Didn't you hear what my father said yesterday? The thoughtless comment of the spoiled brat left Dwayne feeling dizzy once more. I can't believe it's really happening. Though his face twitched as if it might cramp up, now was not the time. Dwayne struggled to control his expression. 20 years as MacLaine's financial officer meant he was well practiced in maintaining a servile expression. I need to cajole him gently, very gently. However, before he could even speak, his subordinates started creating a commotion. Impossible, my lord. You'd spend all that money by yourself? What blasphemy. The young lord's complexion turned icy in an instant. What are you doing? How dare you? Get out, all of you! Dwayne, with a face possibly more rigid than Logan's, was the first to shout angrily. The officials looked as though they had bitten into something distasteful, but upon realizing their mistake, they quickly turned away with the look of defeated soldiers. Dwayne, let's start with the food situation. No, it's the management of the walls, the equipment of the soldiers. Their hopeful gazes locked onto Dwayne, their last bastion. I'll give it my all. Left alone, Dwayne locked the door to his room with a resolved expression and bid them farewell. Ha ha ha. My lord, my subordinates have been quite rude. They are not usually so senseless, but given the dire straits of the family. Ha ha. Is the family really in such dire straits? There we go. Though mindless, his subordinates had yielded an unexpected result. Suppressing the strength in his fist, Dwayne opened his mouth with a slightly sad expression. You may not be aware, but we owe 3 million gold to Cooper's Bank. The interest alone each year is 150,000 gold. You knew? Yeah. I heard it yesterday at Cooper's, after depositing the 3 million gold. Dwayne once again gulped down his saliva upon seeing the deposit slip casually waving in the profligate's hand. Then this simplifies matters. With the interest payment due, repaying that amount would ease the family's woes for many years to come. It's the harvest season, isn't it? Paying the interest should be doable, right? And the maturity date can be extended automatically. But how does he know so much? Even the head of the family isn't familiar with the banking details. Dwayne was momentarily flustered, but quickly composed himself. That wasn't the matter at hand. Ha ha! Managing a territory always involves expenses, and our funds are always tight. If you could just help out a bit. Dwayne's original plan was to get his hands on the entire 3 million gold, but now his ambitions had been significantly lowered without even his own realization. Are you asking me to contribute to the territory's management funds? Yes, exactly that. It seemed as if his persuasion had worked. Just as Dwayne was on the verge of rejoicing internally. Sorry, but no. The calm voice shattered his elation as if he had been soaring to heaven only to be dragged back down. Why not? Dwayne roared without realizing. The chilling glare of the young lord made him shrink back momentarily, but he gritted his teeth for the good of the family. He could not let the fortune of 3 million gold scatter meaninglessly into the air. Why? I thought you were standing up against the Lord's opposition for the sake of the territory. That's right, I am. See, that's what. I will use this money for the good of the family. But certainly not for something as fleeting as immediate management funds. We have to think more long-term. Though unexpected, this answer did not soothe the anguish raging within the officer. What do you know to be making such decisions? Just leave it to me. Dwayne forcefully suppressed the truth rising to his throat and caught his breath. Long-term? Yes. Say I use the money now to resolve the debt. How much would the condition of the territory change? Well, with a larger budget, the financial operations would be more comfortable for at least a few years. It buys us some breathing room. A chuckle. Logan let out a derisive laugh at Dwayne's response, which was exactly as he had expected. And after that? Excuse me? We'll just end up in debt again, right? We have no special products or anything like that. It's a vicious cycle. I'm trying to break that vicious cycle, so I'll use the money according to my plans. Ah, is this really the great lord I knew, that degenerate? Were these signs of a deeper side to the Lord? For once, Dwayne was at a loss for words, having been faced with such a calm analysis of the fundamental problem. Regardless, there was one thing he needed to confirm. Ahem, then, if you plan to use it for the good of the family, may I inquire about your plans? Dwayne asked, circling around the question with all the finesse he could muster. You don't need to know. Ugh! That one phrase pushed Dwayne's patience to its limit. All this talk of the family is rubbish. This brat is just mocking me. It has to be. You. Just as Dwayne was about to lose his composure and erupt in anger, I will show the results through action. The unwavering red eyes forced Dwayne to cling once more to the thin threads of his rationale. Somehow I will save it, no matter what it takes. It was as if these vague mumblings weren't meant for Dwayne. Yet Logan's eyes, deeply sunken by determination, seemed to betray an intense longing. What's going on? That gaze seemed far more desperate than that of Dwayne, who was worried about his own suffocating immediate monthly budget. Why? What could possibly make the noble son, who just came into a fortune, appear so anxious? Different. The look in his eyes when pointing out the fundamental problems of the territory, it was as if this was not the Logan he knew. Observing Dwayne's conflicted expression, Logan let out a bitter laugh. Although Dwayne had come with the intent to milk him for money, he was recognized by all as a loyal servant of the MacLine family. Logan felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness once more at having even more things he couldn't share with such a person. However, there was no time to be lost in such emotions. Now that it's come to this, I'll have to entrust this task to Dwayne. Give him some money too. The idea that came to him on the spur of the moment seemed impromptu, but not a bad one. And with that thought, it became his words. Ah, with this in mind, I do have a request for Dwayne, for the good of the family. What is your request? If you comply, I could also contribute a bit to the territory's management funds. Gulp. Please speak. Could you gather some mercenaries under the family's name? Mercenaries, you say? Yes, they don't necessarily have to be A-grade since they're quite costly. Just any mercenaries capable of riding horses. Perhaps C-rank would be suitable. Over 300 C-rank mercenaries capable of horseback riding. Did you get that? Dwayne's expression changed drastically with the specifics and the number mentioned. 300 C-rank mercenaries. Mercenaries were hired soldiers, fodder soldiers gathered temporarily to bolster forces in urgent situations like war. E and D rank mercenaries were often only good enough for errands, serving simply to pad out the numbers during war. Starting from C rank, however, they were considered genuine mercenaries, each taking on the role of a proper soldier, trained and with enough strength and experience to stand their ground in battle. Moreover, as they lived and thrived on the sword, they tended to be rough and difficult to control. Having such a substantial number of these individuals, not one or two but over 300, was not a matter the MacLine barony could dismiss without concern. Thus, Dwayne had to ask for the reason. Why do you need so many mercenaries, my lord, and so many at that? Unable to tell the truth, that since he couldn't command the family's forces as he wished, he needed his own force to command, Logan used a plausible excuse he had already thought up. I'm thinking of going monster hunting. Excuse me? To hone my real-world experience. It'll also help with the security of the territory. Are you serious? Obviously, it was a bluff. It's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, once I've gathered the mercenaries. Despite his true intentions, Logan's expression remained brazen. If I make personal requests, gathering hundreds will be difficult. Even if possible, it would take too long. That's why I want Dwayne to gather them under the family's name. It was clearly the fastest way to get what he wanted. Indeed, that makes sense, but while the logic was sound, Dwayne wasn't convinced. Perhaps it was to be expected. Despite the term mercenary, bringing a different force inside the territory is a matter that requires the Lord's approval, regardless of the reason. However, unlike the deeply troubled Dwayne, Logan's expression was far more relaxed. He can't refuse. If he's being offered money and a chance to help the territory, the man who had come to plead for financial support can't afford to refuse. If my father objects, he'll probably try to persuade him. So the fact that Dwayne is even contemplating it now was something Logan expected. How much will you provide? That was close to an acceptance, and Logan smiled. I'll give you 100,000 gold. Only that. If you don't like it, never mind. Challenged by Logan's resolute attitude, Dwayne felt his head throbbing. If the Lord refuses, I can't do anything about it. Then I'll have to take the money back. It's for your family. It's my father's family, and it's my money that's being used. The intense exchange of gazes between Logan and Dwayne was brief. The officer, squeezed by chronic budget constraints, finally bowed his head and the deal was settled. After handing over the hefty sum of 100,000 gold to Dwayne, Logan immediately began to prepare to leave the territory. It hadn't been long since he returned from his training, but this time he would not be gone for long. At most, 1 month, that should be enough. It was a premeditated and necessary plan of action. But naturally, his surroundings did not understand. Lord, are you really leaving? Yes. Why in the world? For various reasons, but if I had to pick one, to make money. Haven't you already gotten a lot of money? I need much more. Rick was dumbfounded, but Logan meant every word. In a year, a local war will break out, and in 10 years, an Imperial War will begin. In that maelstrom, to protect the family and survive, what is most needed? It was not something to think deeply about. Powerful forces, in other words, an overwhelming power. And the most necessary thing to acquire that power was undeniably money. Whether to increase the number of soldiers, knights, procure equipment, or store food, everything required money. That's exactly why Logan needed money. Far more than he currently had in his possession. Even if I'm not sure about the local war to stand against the Empire. He couldn't even begin to guess how much money would be needed. Hence, he was now preparing to leave the territory to build this financial foundation. The Lord will not allow it. Even for a good cause, as Rick pointed out, there was a problem. Logan had not even completed his coming-of-age ceremony and was but a young man. More so, in the midst of receiving the family's cold gaze, there was no way to talk of leaving without hearing an earful. Rick made a valid point and Logan acknowledged it. That may be the case. That's what? That's why I'm thinking of sneaking out. What? If the flow of history remains unchanged, there's less than 9 months before the local war. If he had given up on changes from within the family, he needed to bring in change from outside. Thankfully, there's a lot I can do out there. It was strange to only come up with such a thought after the broken engagement had passed. Logan knew about the events happening outside the territory much better than those within, because I was banished, wandering from kingdom to kingdom. And the information he still had was still infinitely valuable. If utilized well, the value of the 2.9 million gold he currently held could be maximized. Of course, I need to first prepare for the local war, so as quickly as possible. He had to find a way to strengthen his external power and come back. Naturally, others couldn't understand his thoughts. What are you thinking? Leaving at this moment, what will the Lord think? Rick illustrated the point, his face a mask of despair. His master had only just begun to think positively for a few months, but now he was starting trouble again. This time not just an internal family matter, but an escape attempt. What am I supposed to do? So he prostrated himself on the ground. If you're going, please take me with you. Otherwise, absolutely, absolutely not. If Logan caused a problem, Rick had to clean up. Already in the midst of chaos, Rick felt that he couldn't cope with his master's escape. But Logan seemed unfazed by his valet's concerns. I'll leave a letter. No one will say anything to you. That's just what you think. You'd prefer I write it directly to my father? What, to make him angrier? Of course not. If the Lord himself condoned Logan's departure, then it would be a little different. But the next day, what's all this after making such a fuss and even extorting money? Rick had to face the Lord's flashing fury and was on the verge of wetting himself. Seeking some fresh air due to the heartbreak of the annulment will return. Written by Logan. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 9. No matter how small the Grandia Kingdom may be, traveling from the southwestern tip of the MacLine territory to Logan's first destination, the western edge of the Kyle territory, would take 3 to 4 days on a swift horse without rest. Therefore, it was essential to spend a few nights on the road. Click. At Logan's gesture, the force momentarily released heat, kindling a fire on the campfire. While he couldn't manipulate multiple elements like a mage, he could still generate a momentary heat. Of course, this was a trick that had become possible only after the creation of the Force Core. Yes, the future has already changed. I can do this. Crackle, crackle. Using the sound of the burning fire as a lullaby and the starlight blanketing the night sky as his blanket, Logan lay down on a makeshift bed of gathered leaves. Sleeping outside was a new experience in this life, but in his past life it had been a familiar routine. Moreover, the current conditions were quite comfortable compared to his previous existence. When you think about it, this era of the kingdom does have its good points, at least in terms of public safety. Even in neighboring empires, bandit groups that included Force users were common, but such occurrences were almost unheard of in this country. This was the result of the traditional culture, which held knights in high esteem, and the nobles' desire for strong control over them. Now far beyond the level of an ordinary low-ranking knight, Logan didn't have to worry about his safety, at least when traveling along the main roads. Amateur bandits wouldn't dare approach upon seeing the noble crest engraved on Logan's armor. But even if his body was at ease, his mind couldn't afford to be. This is no time to be lost in sentimentality. Let's focus. First, the issues with the territory. The MacLine clan's financial dependence on the Kairos family, the in-laws of the head of the family, exceeded 70%. Even if he invested all 3 million gold he obtained from breaking off the engagement to pay off debts, without the Kairos' support, it would be impossible to sustain the territory. The problem was that given the current state of the MacLine territory, finding a fundamental solution was difficult. So the goal is to achieve financial independence and increase the military forces of the territory, Damn it. 200 years earlier, the MacLine clan had been a noble count family, encompassing vast territories, including the baronies of Teslan and the neighboring region, the Sylvan barony to the northwest of Teslan, the Ferretta barony to its south, and even the vast Bifrost plains. As the ruler of the southwestern region of the Grandia Kingdom, they were revered as lords. However, starting with Logan's great-great-grandfather to the current head of the family, Patrick MacLine, 3 generations of ancestors had diminished the family's title and lands through foolish and tyrannical rule. Their vassals had become independent, achieving equal or higher status. There had been talks of the family's titles being revoked, and if Patrick MacLine hadn't become a high-grade knight, the title would have indeed been lost. but even that was a remedy that had come far too late. The granary of the kingdom, once known as MacLine Plains, had fallen into the hands of the most powerful vassal. Other useful lands had been divided among other vassals, and the MacLine clan had been relegated to a harsh and barren plot of land near the southern mountains. Though initially an ancestral seat, after becoming a count, the land's primary function had been as a fortress to ward off monsters descending from the mountains. With no notable specialty products and even lacking a common copper mine found in most territories near high mountains, maintaining a military force to fend off occasional monster incursions was financially challenging. In short, without the support of the Kairos household, the MacLine clan could hardly maintain its current state. Even if we win the territorial war, we'll have to reach out to Kairos again. To break this vicious cycle, Logan needed a considerable sum of money, far more than what he currently possessed. With no special products to offer, he planned to entrust the money to someone capable. Logan knew of a person whose abilities and creditworthiness would be proven in the future. A consistent source of income for the family must be established. Logan's primary objectives for visiting Kyle, the kingdom's largest trade city, were to seek out a person and undertake a particular task. Since he could always make the request, finding the person first seemed best. Moreover, looking for someone in this city meant visiting this particular tavern. The greatest empire on the continent, the Ares Empire, a powerful, centralized government and a nation of meritocracy where anyone with ability, regardless of age or gender, could become an official and enjoy power and wealth. Even foreigners not born in the empire were eligible for these opportunities. A prime example was Philip Claude, a Grandia Kingdom native, who ranked among the empire's top 10 merchants and was nicknamed the Golden Bug. He was one of the empire's influential merchants and was called a traitor by his compatriots from Grandia for his actions. Despite the criticisms, he supported his homeland's refugees and ultimately used his wealth and power to create the autonomous region of Grandia. And he also provided secret financial support to our independence movement. Logan knew that Philip's hometown was Cahill in the Grandia Kingdom and remembered clearly that his ability and credibility as a merchant were impeccable across the continent. Could it really be that guy? Logan approached the young man with a muddled head. Damn it, what to do now that? Philip raised his head to prevent tears that seemed imminent at the thought of his own helplessness. The outside sky was clear, but it only seemed to heighten his sense of gloom. Stories of merchant houses collapsing overnight due to scams were not uncommon, but he never imagined that he would be the protagonist of such a tale. He felt as if he was alone in a different world. Maybe I should just die? After mulling over the same thought for the past month, Philip scoffed and lowered his head again. If he actually had the courage to die, he would have done so already. He was a coward, lacking even the courage to end his life. Thinking about wandering aimlessly to escape the suffocating feeling, his despair paralyzed him so much that he couldn't muster the strength to stand. Excuse me, are you Sir Philip Claude by any chance? An unfamiliar voice reached Philip's ears. Looking up, he saw a young man with remarkable red hair and red eyes. The intense, desperate gaze in those red eyes was memorable, despite the dirtied half-plate armor and greaves. Yes, that's me, but who might you be? As Philip nodded, the intensity of the gaze magnified. Oh, indeed, you do have the impressive eyes I've heard about. Complimenting Philip's unusual gray eyes, the red-haired youth smiled warmly and moved even closer. Instinctively, Philip took a step back. The determination in the young man's face was something Philip, a merchant, had seen countless times. It was greed. An unfamiliar face displaying such emotion stoked fearful imaginings in Philip's mind. It was clear that even by selling his last small commercial building, he couldn't repay his debts, leading to his inevitable slavery. He had anticipated becoming a slave, but the gray eyes are unusual. They'll fetch a higher price, you know. The words of the loan sharks he had inadvertently heard echoed in his mind, sending shivers down his spine. The timing of this figure's appearance, and now that he thought of it, the state of his old equipment, were all characteristic of a mercenary thug. Could it be? Philip inwardly prayed that it wasn't so. The thought of his last shred of human dignity being degraded filled him with dread. Subconsciously, he adjusted his torn clothes and shrank back. The red eyes seemed to rove over his body, raising goosebumps. What do you want? The repayment date has not yet arrived, has it? Come back after the sale proceeds from the shop come in 3 days. Oh, I'm not here to collect a debt, but I won't do that kind of work, even if I become a slave. Absolutely not. Excuse me? I'm literate. I have knowledge of the commercial world. Even as a slave, I can be useful elsewhere. I absolutely won't do that kind of work. What are you talking about? Anyhow, the sale proceeds have not yet come in. Please go away. As Philip gestured frantically and yelled, the young man in front of him gave a wry smile and shook his head. I'm not here to collect money, I'm here to invest. Excuse me? Philip's confusion couldn't be more apparent. Are you talking to me? Yes. To this failed business? Yes. That's why it should be easy to invest. His confident stance and self-assured smile struck a very different chord this time. Finally, Philip understood the situation properly. He's just a madman. Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 10. He would not bother to throw bait like this just to deceive someone who had nothing but debt. This one must be undoubtedly mad, and there was nothing more foolish than engaging in lengthy conversations with a madman. But still, how much do you plan to invest? Because there was always a chance, however slight. With the thought of preparing for the unexpected, Philip tossed the question nonchalantly. Perhaps a rich young lord can't handle his excessive wealth and splurges foolishly. Understanding it was a pitiful hope, Philip couldn't help but cling on to it. After all, in his desperate state, he couldn't afford to ignore even a rotten lifeline. How much debt do you have? And what about your plans for the next venture? To Philip's surprise, the madman's answer had some logic to it. A faint hope began to rise in Philip's heart. Would you really invest in a trading company that has already failed once? Well, it's fine. I believe in Sir Philip's talent. I want to invest and see. When have you ever seen me? Yet despite his constant ranting, the madman's gaze never wavered. Such consistent reactions were not characteristic of a madman. Putting aside his prejudices, Philip felt a sense of familiarity in the intense gaze of the young man before him, the eyes of someone missed. Father, it was the gaze of a person confident in their judgment, someone who knew exactly the path they must take and had the belief to walk it to the end. It was then that Philip allowed the hope he had been forcibly ignoring to raise its head again. Are you serious about investing? His heart fluttered. It was like seeing a ray of light in a pool of despair as his slim hope grew stronger. Yes. How much would you need to pay off your debts and make a fresh start? I'll support you fully. Just as these sweet words made Philip's mood soar, tap. An insignificant noise caused him to reflexively turn his head. Dust fell off from the self-proclaimed investor's armor, revealing an emblem. The moment Philip saw the emblem, the enthusiasm bubbling inside him turned ice cold in an instant. Of course, it figures. The bitter feeling was all the more miserable because of the high expectations he had held. I'll meet your conditions as best as I can. Just let me know. All excitement had faded when he came face to face with the swindler's grinning face. Ha, really? Such a despicable young lad. I was about to let you off lightly, thinking I misunderstood something. Cold words naturally spilled out. What did he say? Logan was taken aback. Everything was going well when suddenly he couldn't conceal his bewilderment from Philip's abrupt words. You. If you're going to scam someone, at least prepare properly, like those bastards who scammed me before. What? Philip's dramatically changed expression was met with an unexpected retort. Huh. It seemed he was spitefully picking a fight with someone who might have saved him. Had he not known the boy's future, he would have thought of him as a fool. No. Even with that knowledge, it seemed like an act of utter stupidity. What are you saying? You're not an investor, are you? What? Is this guy crazy? Why the sudden change? Having failed once in business, is he now like a mad dog eager to bite anyone? These questions and more were reflected in Philip's eyes as he answered with a snort. You haven't been in Kyle long enough to even shake the dirt off your shoes. And you come straight to the merchant's district to talk about investing? You know who I am? Philip pointed to his shoes, which, just as he claimed, still had some dirt on them. That finger soon pointed to Logan's chest. Plus, I've memorized every noble family crest in this country. That crest on your armor is from the MacLine baronial house of the Southwest. So what's the problem? Dear nobleman come swindler? Though the claims were untrue, Philip felt a pang in his chest as he seemed to know what would come next. The MacLine house is a family of leeches living off their in-laws, and they're talking about investing? A family that can't even pay off their own debts? Ugh! It was painful to admit these irrefutable facts. I'm truly sorry that I have to advise you, but impersonating a noble and getting caught will get you executed, you know? They're rather strict here, understood? Philip gestured, cutting across his neck, his face a mix of cynicism and irritation. No, but that's actually true. And more crucially, your attitude. What's wrong with it? An investor is an absolute superior to a desperate merchant, yet you're behaving as if you're anxious to invest in me. Even the target of your deceit is wrong. You rookie scammer, I'm truly dirt poor, got it? You bastard. His voice became increasingly forceful, the last of his words almost a scream. I'm so broke that I don't even have money to buy food for myself, you son of a... Philip's voice filled the dust-coated shop, brimming with emotion. Seeing a grown man cry is as uncomfortable as having to console a weeping woman. Feeling this anew, Logan still hesitated to make a move. Despite Philip's accusations containing many inaccuracies, they could have been reasonable doubts had Logan not been through his own experiences. And that's the problem. Despite such talent, the young man had been scammed. If it were the same renowned merchant he had known in his previous life, things would be different. He's not that capable person yet. Perhaps the trials and tribulations he had yet to face would create the man he would one day become. Actually, it must have been exactly that which crafted his future self. Time must have crafted the merchant, but Logan didn't have time to wait for the gold bug to awaken the abilities he had in his previous life and go through all that hardship. What to do? Logan's trail of thoughts suddenly reached a fundamental question. Wait, why do I need to invest in the trading company at all? The future Imperial merchant was considering abandoning the path of a merchant entirely. This might be the chance to make the future Empire's top 10 merchant my own. His confused thoughts seemed to align suddenly. Even if the man didn't grow to where he was in the previous life, it would still weaken the power of the Ares Empire on its own. Having organized his thoughts, Logan spoke with a bright smile. If I were to pay off all your debts and hire you for life, how much would it cost? That was enough to stop Philip's wailing. What are you saying? Are you still trying to scam? About to shout again, Philip was silenced upon seeing the golden aura bursting from Logan's hand. Could a young genius capable of using force actually be a noble imposter running scams? It would be idiotic to throw a promising future into the gutter like that. And that realization proved every speculation Philip had made so far was wrong. Really? Seeing a stunned Philip, Logan reminded himself, he is the future merchant, one of the Empire's top 10. With a composed expression, Logan gathered his thoughts. After an awkward silence, a resigned voice spoke up. So you were really a young lord, Eek, but what did you say? Trying to convert his derogatory speech to respect, Philip ended up sounding extremely awkward. I said, how much would it be to hire you for life if I paid off your debt? Logan clarified. You're willing to hire me for life? Yes. Name your price for the contract. Consider paying off your debt as a gift. Logan thought it would be clear-cut at this point. However, Philip's expression grew more twisted upon hearing this. I must first apologize for the disrespect I showed due to my misjudgment. A sense of foreboding washed over Logan at the ominous prelude. But, unless there's been a tremendous change I'm unaware of, the MacLine household wouldn't have the means, would they? Are you suggesting we both sink together with my debts on top of yours? I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in a suicide pact. Philip firmly expressed his refusal. He might have misjudged the person, but one thing was clear to him. The MacLine baronial house is a beggar's family. What would they have to offer? It wasn't a scam. Then either the noble young master was mocking him, or the young lord was too naive to understand the harsh realities of the world. Being born noble makes the world seem like an easy place, huh? Philip decided to teach this young nobleman a lesson in reality. The existing debt alone is 250,000 gold, and my person is worth that much too. The only certainty for a merchant is a contract. Can we sign it right away, or should I wait? Throughout his exceedingly sarcastic tone, the young lord's expression hardened. That figures. Seeing that look, Philip was about to extinguish the last bit of hope he had held when suddenly, 500,000 seems like odd math to me. How can someone in 250,000 debt claim a personal value of another 250,000, unless you mean a negative 250,000? Struck out of nowhere by a forcible fact, Philip felt a deep blow to his heart. It's that. Fine, I'll add another 50,000 for your pride, so how about 300,000 total? What? No, what did you say? 300,000? Would you rather not? As Logan's words grew more brief, Philip seemed too shocked to even notice. Then shall we leave it as is? Utterly bewildered by the unexpected sum, Philip collapsed at that one sentence. 300,000 gold. Yes, absolutely yes. To Philip, it was as if salvation had unexpectedly arrived in response to a casual remark. There was no reason for him to refuse. Shall we make a contract right now? Excuse me? Logan nonchalantly put down his traveler's sack as if it were nothing significant. Thud. The sack sounded unusually heavy, echoing weightily in Philip's chest. A golden glow peeked out from the open top, revealing a bag full of gold coins. The money Logan had withdrawn earlier that day from the copper's Kyle branch. Any merchant would go mad at the sight of that pile of gold. Thankfully, it seems I have enough for the upfront payment. Philip thought he saw a halo around the smiling owner of the backpack. What is this man? An angel? Feeling somewhat detached from reality, Philip remained speechless for a while. This for real? Gazing at the gold coin sack as if in a dream, Philip soon held Logan's hand with tears welling up in his eyes. Thank you. I really, truly thank you. I considered resigning myself to a life of slavery. And now I find myself kneeling. I already was indeed. Sinking to the floor was one thing, but now his posture resembled a worshipper praying to a god, an admittedly overwhelming sight. So, why do you wish to employ me to go to such monetary lengths? Do you really think so? That I may bloom late and help increase your wealth? No, it must happen. For my own purpose, it must. Logan's determined gaze seemed to move Philip once again. Nobody has ever shown me such trust, not even my late father did so much. Overcome with emotion, Philip took a moment to compose himself while Logan looked on with a faint smile. Let's go make that contract. Where to? We can't write a contract here, can we? Really? Regardless of where the contract is written, what does it matter? Logan took the befuddled Philip to one of the rare magic shops in Kyle. There, contract complete! As a drop of blood from Philip's finger fell onto the contract, the bluish mana inscribed upon it glowed brightly, ensnaring his body. It was an expensive magical contract worth 10,000 gold. From now on, if Philip intentionally committed an act harmful to Logan, he would experience soul-rending agony. Unless he wanted to suffer, he'd need to awaken his own force to become a superior knight, or pay a mage of at least the fourth circle hundreds of times the sum to lift the curse. In essence, the contract exchanged Philip's life for 300,000 gold, a contract for all intents and purposes akin to buying a slave. Thus, it was understandable that Philip's face soured, despite just moments ago being filled with emotion. A scum using an exorbitant contract worth the price of 30 slaves just to make one slave out of me. And with 300,000 gold on top of that, Philip's continued grumbling fell on seemingly deaf ears as Logan's face was brimming with smiles. How else would we trust each other at first meeting? If you invest a fortune, there ought to be a guarantee. Though Logan spoke casually, Philip was clearly agitated, but sighed in acquiescence. Better than being dragged off by those other scoundrels. Being treated similarly to a slave was better than being officially branded and treated as one. That was what he told himself to feel better. But his spirits irresistibly dampened due to the previously high expectations. As Philip's gloom was starting to set in again, Logan casually remarked, "We can always get rid of the contract once we build mutual trust, so let's do our best from here on." A vague promise without any specified period or conditions. Yet that simple statement was enough to kindle a small flame in Philip's dead-looking eyes. Chapter 11. Debt Repayment and Preparations. It had taken only a day to pay off Philip's debt and sort out the remaining burden he carried. In his only remaining asset, his mansion, Logan explained to Philip what had to be done going forward. "I may take you with me, but you won't be formally employed by the family right away." There was no need to tell him the unpleasant truth that hiring him could potentially tarnish one's own reputation. "So for now, I just wish you'd do what I ask of you here." "Yes, I understand, young Lord Logan." Despite likely having questions, Philip's response showed no hesitation. As Logan viewed Philip's potential with some doubt, he knew he needed to test him. "We'll see once I give him a task." Initially, he thought to take advantage of the merchant's skills not in making money, but in procuring goods. His second objective in the trading city of Kyle was to secure necessary supplies for the immediate operation in his fiefdom. "The first task I'll set for you is to purchase large quantities of cartridges, springs, and glue made from the southern Imperial ironwood." "Yes?" Philip looked perplexed, so Logan, instead of explaining the reasons, outlined the specifications of the materials needed, and it would be good if we could get about 100 samples for various experiments beforehand. "Are you planning to sell toys?" Putting aside his cheeky attitude and the mocking tone, since the purported purpose of employment was to make money, it wasn't strange that Philip's mind went in that direction. Something like that. However, there was no need to discuss right now the plan to create weapons for the war. For the time being, Logan was more focused on producing the samples based on his memories from his previous life. As for the matter at hand, the Southern Imperial ironwood is known for its durability, so quality springs will only need to be standardized. And as for glue, the stronger the adhesive quality, the better, correct? That's right. Then there's really no need to buy them here or even from the Empire. Philip spoke quite quickly and unexpectedly. What? Ironwood from the Northern King's territories is even sturdier than the Southern Imperial ironwood. They are mainly produced in the Northern Triton estates. There are many artisans who make goods from ironwood there, and naturally, there's glue too. Personally, I think it's far superior to Imperial produce. Buying directly rather than through merchants here would also mean a cheaper price. Oh? Logan, now a mercenary, had used weapons made from these materials only after the collapse of the kingdom, an unknown fact to him. I still have connections from my ancestors in those places. If you wish, I can contact them to have about 100 samples sent to the MacLine estates purely on credit. Shall I make the arrangements? Yes, do that. Logan nodded, simply taken aback by Philip's rapid and unexpected response. More competent than I thought. But Logan still held back on his assessment of Philip. With that in mind, he brought up the most significant matter he had contemplated. This was an item that, even with his current shortage of business acumen, could be enough to make money, leveraging information from the future. He'll probably panic, though. With the feeling of playing a mischievous prank on a fussy friend, Logan casually dropped the bombshell as if nothing was wrong. I'm also thinking about buying monster meat. Ah, I see. What? Philip's surprise was only natural. Monsters weren't natural creatures. They enjoyed destroying nature and tormenting other life forms, byproducts of ancient demon kings or the remnants of unrecorded ancient civilizations, or perhaps simply born from sorcery. According to scholars, their opinions varied, but they shared a common perspective. Monsters are antagonistic to other life forms. Their blood and flesh carry toxins and continue to harm living beings and destroy the environment after death. That's why, when vanquishing monsters, it was customary to burn anything other than their bones and hides. Only special parts of particularly unique monsters were harvested for magical or specific purposes. I must be hearing things because of bad ears. You meant the byproducts of monsters, not the meat, right? No, I meant the meat. Are you serious? Despite the polite words, Philip's expression clearly read, "Did I just see a madman?" Logan just grinned and added more to his explanation. I'm planning to buy and stockpile the meat of the lower-class monster Karok. Karok, you said? The lower-class monster Karok looked similar to a wild boar with a horn on its forehead. Even if they resembled commonplace livestock, their blood possessed toxins, which meant their meat was not fit for human consumption. Yeah, Karok meat. Why are you emphasizing meat? You don't mean there are people who eat it? I just want you to purchase and gather that meat. As Logan focused on dictating his request without answering Philip's question, Philip gave him a look as if he had been presented spoiled food, while his gaze silently conveyed, "Are you seriously out of your mind?" Philip attempted to reason clearly. Monster meat is best disposed of by burning. No matter how much you pay for it, it will only ensure a loss. It won't be in this case. What kind of nonsense? Philip choked back a curse that was about to escape as he looked at Logan, but Logan appeared to be undeterred, his eyes shining even brighter. Well, if you say so, how much do you intend to use? Philip eventually asked, signaling surrender with a raised hand gesture. However, the ensuing answer made him involuntarily leap to his feet. 1 million. 1 million? Have you gone insane? Philip's near hysteria was laden with unfiltered emotion, but Logan simply responded with a smile, firm in his assertion. I'll spend even more if it turns out to be profitable. Definitely. No matter what rumors you've heard, a rumor is not a reason to invest such money. For a rumor to become reality, you need indisputable, concrete evidence. Philip spoke with a voice so loud and flushed in the face, turning heads of people passing by outside the mansion, yet Logan's demeanor remained unchanged. Evidence will come definitively. How can you be so sure with? To Philip's exasperated protest, current common sense dictated that his response was entirely logical. Yet in a few years, the situation would drastically change. Next summer, in one of the Empire's towers, a serum neutralizing monster blood would begin being sold. It was a neutralizer made from common ingredients, without rare herbs or magic. Though it only worked on the blood of low-level monsters, its cost-effectiveness was extraordinary. Moreover, anyone could make it if they knew the ingredients. Since monster hunting by mercenaries and hunters mostly involved low-level monsters, this serum would rapidly spread across the continent. Soon after, in regions where food was scarce, the consuming of Karok meat and other livestock-looking monsters began. This shocking new culinary culture spread, and during the winter of the same year, numerous cases surfaced of people curing impotence by eating Karok meat. Even those physically castrated due to injury reported its effectiveness, and the moment the Grandia Royal Tower officially confirmed it, the Capital Grand saw a sudden explosion in demand for Karok meat. Less than a year later, the already rare monster species Karok became all but extinct in the continents. Afterward, its meat was traded for more than its weight in gold. Even dried jerky slices became as valuable. Although humanity fought monsters for thousands of years, never had they eradicated an entire species. Yet, due to research indicating its benefits to virility, a single low-ranking monster species disappeared. It's absurd, but Logan couldn't exactly explain to Philip that he had seen the future. You're certain about this, even though I am firmly opposed? That's correct. With a resigned sigh, Philip seemed to ponder for a moment, though the contemplation did not last long. So what price are you thinking for the purchase of Karok meat? At the current time, Karok meat has no value. No one's buying, and it's probably all being burned anyway. Despite questioning why Logan would buy something evidently useless, Philip refrained from voicing this. So, if just delivering the carcass can earn money, with the carriage fee considering the standards of the kingdom, 200 gold might be enough. That's per carcass, and if we catch a lot of Karok at once, transportation would be much cheaper. Bulk shipments would be best. Oh, you've even considered transportation costs to no end? Philip's commendation came with a hint of sarcasm, which was particularly irritating. Is my calculation wrong? No, it's not incorrect. Then, if you set the price and budget at 1 million, were you thinking of commissioning a royal grade hunt from the Mercenary Guild and then having me purchase them? That's the idea. What's wrong with that? Oh, nothing. The calculations are accurate, but you've completely misdirected the approach. Huh? Why go to the trouble of paying mercenaries expensive fees when you can get the same results cheaper? Why act the fool? Suddenly I'm feeling stiff all over. What are you saying? As Logan fixed him with a disdainful glare and attempted to retort, Philip quickly changed his expression and continued his thought. It's not carcasses you need, but the meat, right? And you said that meat is currently being discarded. That's right. Then simply put out an offer to the Merchant Guild at the price of beef, and everything will be resolved. What? Merchants who will buy and sell anything for profit are dime a dozen. Especially if what they're acquiring is essentially trash, there'll hardly be any cost to them. Wow. Logan's mouth fell open in speechless surprise. This guy, he's already proving his worth. As it turned out, the top 10 merchants of the Empire were not just more competent than expected, but exceeded all imagination. From now on, leave all money-related matters to me, young Lord Logan. My fate is now tied to your future after all. Only Philip's reassuring yet unsettling words slightly ached in Logan's heart. How much? The deposit is 50,000 gold. We will buy smoked Karok meat sealed or dried jerky at 1 gold per kilo. The Merchant Guild's guarantee must be clearly included. If the deposit runs low, we're prepared to deposit an additional 100,000 gold. Wow, the deposit proved the sincerity of the request, ensuring the Merchant Guild's handlings were not wasted. Despite the contract signed and the deposit made, every pair of eyes at the guild remained locked on Philip in disbelief. Crazy. Buying monster meat? Claude Trading went bankrupt. Was it because of the mad owner? Although the surroundings buzzed with skeptical voices, there was no shortage of merchants willing to take on the order. Would you be interested in meat from other monsters? Our company specializes in monster byproducts, if it pleases you. Many were ready to sell the meat of all monsters as if hungrily eyeing vulnerable prey. Within a mere 2 days of leaving the request with the Merchant Guild and placing a deposit, strange rumors spread throughout the commercial circles of the Kyle estates. The rumors spoke of the disinherited son of the fallen MacLine family going mad and amassing monster meat. Logan's reputation spread rapidly. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going through such hardship. Philip apologized with a bow. He was the one who spread the rumors, ensuring faster dissemination of the Karok meat request as part of a larger plan. The unintended side effects never crossed his mind. Ha, what's to fuss about? That made things spread even wider. Good, very good. Well done. What was shocking beyond anticipation was the laughter and applause of the person in question. The thank you, haha. Despite having spread his supposed disgrace, Philip received compliments. This guy really must be mad, Philip thought, but fortunately, he didn't voice it aloud. To care for the imported Triton Estate ironwood and accumulate Karok meat to send to MacLine territory, Philip stayed behind in Kyle. To achieve these goals, Logan had entrusted him with an astonishing sum of 500,000 gold. As long as you carry out the job I've given you, you're free to invest that money into other businesses. If you're confident of succeeding, even borrowing is an option, and I will generously reward the outcomes. Shedding any doubts about Philip's abilities after the Kerok meat affair, Logan made a bold decision. Philip himself was stunned, unsure why such trust was extended with the money. It's all money saved thanks to this guy anyway. Having budgeted 1.5 million gold for expenses in Kyle territory, he had spent only 450,000 gold. Even accounting for the expected 150,000 gold for purchasing ironwood, over 900,000 gold was saved. Therefore, there was no reluctance in entrusting, or rather investing, in Philip. In fact, Logan felt quite relieved. Philip clawed. The mission of securing financial support has been perfectly cleared. The amount of 500,000 gold also represented a successful first step in recruiting talent for the future. While employing Philip was part of overcoming the imminent crisis, the real preparation was for the aftermath. Now he needed to find talents to triumph in the first crisis of the estate war. We need an engineer. Someone who could recreate a concept discussed only with an experienced user, and if possible, an instructor to train a mercenary troop. It would be beneficial to find a mercenary capable of training and controlling the troops that Dwayne was arranging. Both of Logan's plans required exceptional talents, and luckily, the place to recruit such people was not far from Kyle.